Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 272. That's Planet Extra Podcast. I am Chaz the Chadale, host of Planet America on ABC Australia, and this is an official podcast of the ABC. So say hi to the Ombudsman for me. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening, you can find us on YouTube and Facebook at Planet PEP, and you can find highlights there as well. You also find timestamps and show notes in our blurbs, and if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we are likely to see it. Do not forget to subscribe for all that peppy goodness. It all helps. You can also tweet us or blue skies at PEPCHASDRDAVE. That's at PepChaz Dr. Dave. If you want to chat to some fellow peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen right now or in the blurb of the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lackey privately, why not email us? That address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. That address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. I've got some beauties later on. You wait till you see them. And we are recording this at 9:48 a.m. on Wednesday, the 26th of August, which is at, what's that? That would be 7:48 p.m. on Tuesday night on the East Coast. How about that? That's unusual. But for now, let's turn to the lady who simply will not raise the stakes in inconsequential views. I speak, of course, about Melina Wicks herself. Melina Wicks.
Hello.
Hello. I'm losing my voice and I'm losing my mind. But it's okay because I'm about to have the good drugs. I mean, my operation is tomorrow and I will feel a lot better after that, and my voice no doubt will return, and I'll be tanned and refreshed on one leg in a week's time. How
Lovely.
you going?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad.
You know, when I'm not on this podcast, I listen to it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a fan. I'm a pepper. And I listen on 1.5
Everyone's a
speed.
pepper.
Because, you know, I do with everything. And when you do that intro, it obviously sounds really fast on 1.5 speed. But when I hear it in real speed, it's still so fast.
I was going slow today because my lips are... They're feeling inflated. They're inflated with tiredness. But, now, Melina is actually, she's doing us quite the service because she's not only here today to bid me bon voyage on my way to the hospital, but she's going to welcome me back afterwards, aren't you? Mm-hmm. You have agreed to that.
I have, yes.
I'm not telling tales our school here. Melina is going to be next Friday. Not this Friday coming up, but next Friday while Dave's away. So anything that we don't get to today, we can just pick up where we left off in a little more than a week's time. Melina, what are you grateful for?
All right. We have all had a lot of fun with the fight for the Senate in Alaska between Republican incumbent Dan S. Sullivan and challenger Dan J. Sullivan, who may or may not be a deliberate spoiler trying to stack the deck for the Democrat candidate, Mary Patola. Yeah, well. And Alaska has just had their all-party primary where the top four go through regardless of party. And it's looking like both Dan Sullivans are likely to progress to the general election. But this is serious stuff. This could be one of the decisive seats in the Senate. We don't actually want people to have unnecessary confusion when it comes to casting their vote. That would be a bad thing. So that is why I am so grateful that now the general election is here, Dan S. Sullivan has picked up a crucial endorsement that is going to make it absolutely clear who Republicans should vote for in Alaska.
Who's that?
And that endorsement is from the Republican former mayor of Anchorage, Dan Sullivan.
So Republican Dan Sullivan is endorsing Republican Dan Sullivan over the top of Republican Dan Sullivan.
Yeah, I would have thought it's pretty obvious at this point. But to be clear, that's Dan A. Sullivan, former mayor of Anchorage, who very much wants you to vote for Dan S. Sullivan and not Dan J. Sullivan.
Do you have a favourite Dan Sullivan?
I'm just wondering if there's any man in Alaska that's not named Dan Sullivan.
That might be the John Smith.
I'm yet to hear of one.
Yeah, and they're all Republicans too.
So I've heard.
Yes, that is pretty cool. I think I did know on the Discord they were pretty excited about that development as well. I think we can all be grateful about third Dan Sullivan. I wonder, maybe that's the reason why they had a Final Four in Alaska because I know there's so many Dan Sullivans. They thought, well, what are the chances that there's going to be 4 Dan Sullivans? because they had this nightmare of if they had 3 and then you had all of them Dan Sullivans against Dan Sullivan. It could just blow everyone's minds. But
I like that Republican Mayor Dan Sullivan withheld his endorsement from Republican Senate candidate Dan Sullivan until now.
That's
Kept
true.
his powder dry.
Yeah, well, he had to. I guess he knew that his was the ultimate endorsement, so he just wanted to wait till the other Dan Sullivan really needed it. He's never needed it more than with the threat from the other Dan Sullivan. Well, I'm grateful for Melina. Now, flock cameras. I'm not grateful for them, but let me explain what they are first. Flock cameras, they've been a bit of a story in America recently. In fact, I know you know that because you were going to do a whole segment on flock cameras at one point in time until we had about 12 other things to talk about. There are over 120,000 flock cameras in use in America in every state except Alaska. The Dan Sullivans don't like them. And they are constantly reading people's license plates. They're license plate cameras. And they store them in a database. That database is powered by AI. So it's kind of creepy. It's a little bit enemy of the state, except with a few less enhance commands. I don't know if you guys ever watched Enemy of the State, but there's some hilarious enhance commands in there.
Freeze there. Times 10. Focus on the drop. Enhance, then forward frame by frame.
They're not very popular at the moment. People aren't liking the flock cameras very much. Theoretically, they're about stopping crime and about we've seen this license plate, like kidnapping someone or robbing a bank or whatever. Where did it end up? And so then we can go and arrest the people. But it's not hard to imagine how this information can be misused. There are literally dozens of reported cases where police officers have illegally searched their current or former romantic partners to stalk them.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't have to imagine it because it's already happened.
Yeah. Literally dozens of just that one kind of abuse. And there's so many other kinds of abuse there could be. Flock has proposed a bunch of new data security policies to alleviate the concerns. It's not alleviating anything. No one is happy with Flock at the moment. I would tell you about those new policies, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to tell you about the new policies or why people are unimpressed, because I am not trying to smuggle in extra content here through my Grateful. Some cynical peppers have suggested that I just smuggle in an extra topic through my Grateful that I couldn't fit in the show. Of course they're right. But in this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm bringing up flock cameras solely so you know the background, so you can understand my Grateful, which involves the most awesome protest that was held the other day. It's great. I like a funny protest generally, Melina. I've been involved in a few funny protests in my time. Politics can get very dry, very tiresome. It's nice when someone's got a sense of humour. People get very earnest. And it's good because A, it's a welcome change-up. B, it's more effective anyway. It works. It gets media attention. It's memorable. It makes you want to be on the protesters' side. I've often said on this podcast, well, maybe not often, but at least 3 times have I said on this podcast that Bowling for Soup were absolutely right in the mid-noughts when they said high school never ends. Well, they sung it. They were absolutely right. High school does never end. The person who takes himself the least seriously, just like in the schoolyard, is always the coolest. They always are the ones who win. And you just ask the inflatable frogs outside the Portland Detention Centre. They'll tell you all about it. But anyway, last week, San Diego was holding a hearing in their city hall about flock cameras and whether they should ban them or not. And who should turn up to testify in favour of flock cameras but Darth Vader himself?
The Emperor is a fan of flock, and we must continue utilizing flock technologies so that we can follow and surveil the rebel scum as they move from playground to playground, from playground to pool, from pool to gymnasium, because we all know that the flock cameras are not only following the license plate readers, they are following children, and we need this. I need this so I can stalk my ex-girlfriend. And how will the people trust this city council when this city council continues to vote for surveillance technology that imprisons them? Miss Campbell, you must work on your Jedi mind tricks. This technology will help us find the rebel scum and their hidden base on Hoth.
Someone tell Natalie Portman that Darth Vader has evil designs with flock cameras on her. I love that kind of shit. I love it. There's a reason that we did stupid stuff like that on the Chaser. I love that shit. And I am grateful that someone is keeping the candle burning, whoever that person in the Darth Vader mask was. More, please. Love it. Couple of quick correspondences. Hit that jingle, Lockie. Pizzagate correspondence. Liam, this is a correction from me last week. The pizza bar guy didn't actually shoot anyone or anything on site. I said he shot up a pizzeria. He definitely went there with the intent to bust into the basement, but when he found the place had no basement, he realised how wrong he was and surrendered willingly. I know that doesn't change my point at all. I don't like being wrong. So thank you very much, Liam. My memory deceived me. I'm glad you corrected me. Another correction, well, kind of a correction, maybe a correction, on Trump height. Twigman, this is my kind of correction. This is a real peppy kind of correction. On a super pedantic point, George Washington was famously tall for his time, standing at 6'2", while Trump's height from his dubious White House medical records lists him at 6'3". A 2012 New York license has him at 6'2", which is likely a more accurate measure. So given the height loss that comes with aging, I think there is a case to be made that current Trump is not taller than George Washington was at the time that he was president. So George Washington may have been taller than Trump when president. I think almost certainly, because people do shrink quite a lot. So that's a good call, Twigman. I like the pedantry. It's good stuff. I'm amazed how fast, just a little aside, I'm amazed how fast I am shrinking. You're going to be taller than me in a couple of years, Melina.
Well, I don't know about that.
Like I distinctly remember that when I was in high school that I was just not quite 176 centimetres because I wanted to be 176 centimetres for some reasons I don't understand. And I never quite got there. I was like 175 and a half. Now I'm like 174. It's pathetic. It's shrinking at a rate of knots. Anyway, Melina correspondence. You're
That's
right.
me.
Yeah, that's right. Perfect time. I can feel you tensing up there. What's this about? No, this is okay. DJ Crispy asks, can you please ask Melina what she thinks of the Melina/Melania poster, which she's going to be sitting in front of this week. Indeed, she is sitting in front of this poster. It is right to her right. I love it, says DJ Crispy, but I would be interested in hearing her thoughts. What are your thoughts, Melina?
It depends. Do you want to explain the background of how it came about?
Sure. The background is some of the peppers were genuinely having PTSD style experiences when they watched PEP because they kept on seeing a Melania poster. I don't think it was Melania herself that was giving them these horrible feelings. I think it was they'd watched the documentary and they didn't want to be reminded of it ever again. And I'm not sure exactly, but whatever it was, they were saying, you got to take down that poster. That's horrible. It's killing us. And I was like, I like that poster. Why don't we have a little bit of fun with this poster? And that's what we came up with. And ever since, it's been, I think, quite a popular poster. It's amazing how just a little cutout head and an eye can make such a huge difference.
Well, that's funny because I was told that the background to the poster was that a certain someone in the organization could not get my name right and kept calling me Melania, and so it was changed to remind them. So that's a rumor. To answer the original question, I like it better now that I've heard your version.
Well, my version is the truth, because I'm the one who came up with that. So, I'd love to off air. I can't wait to hear who the person is who can't get your name right. But, we won't dump them in on the pod. But no. That's the truth. We had like, it wasn't just one or two. It was like 6 peppers going, please get rid of that poster. But ever since we changed it, no problems at all.
Oh, well, that's very nice.
Yeah. Now, I got a few updates because a lot's happened in just a few days. Natalie Harp update. Let's start off with. Last week, there was a lot of chatting about Trump's executive assistant, Natalie Harp. I'm going to ask you in a second, Melina, if you've got any thoughts you'd like to share about her. But giving you time to think, I'll start with a correspondence correction from Susan. Hey! Now, I told you last week about her ride in the trunk of a car during Trump's trial to get to the court. So keen was she to get to Trump's side in court with her portable meme printer. Now, Susan says, to be fair, when Nat jumped in the trunk of the car, they meant the back jump seats that you enter through the raised tailgate, which isn't quite as good as like being kidnapped. She says she's still a nutter though. That is a little disappointing, I have to say, although not as disappointing as the next, to be fair, from user RG. Apparently Harp does not literally walk around with a printer around her neck. I'm sad about that because it's peak comedy. She only carries it around with her at all times. And I thought my job stank. That is hugely disappointing because I had read that she does sometimes indeed, not all the time, but sometimes have the printer around her neck. And I love that image so much. But since I've been looking for more evidence of that after user RG's comment, I think you might be right, user RG. I think it was hyperbole when I saw it written down. It was just someone being a smart ass. At the very least, I've found no actual proof of that, and I've looked really hard. Really hard. This is why we can't have nice things. Although Stephen still likes the situation with Natalie Harp. Stephen wrote, she's called the human printer because she prints them out. This sounds like a description for the lamest superhero ever invented. It does have Marvel vibes about it, doesn't it? I hope that's the next Marvel movie. I would definitely queue up for that one at midnight. But Melina, what are your thoughts about the Natalie Harp situation which you'd care to share?
In terms of the general question of whether, Ossoff was being sexist to raise it in the first place, I have a few thoughts on that.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I generally feel like if you love Trump, you can't really seriously say you're offended by sexism on principle. As a rule, those things are pretty mutually exclusive, in my opinion.
Bit of a double standard.
So
if you're supporting Mr. Piggy, who calls literally just women in front of him piggy, it's pretty hard to get offended on behalf of women. A
lot of people have compiled a lot of lists of the many sexist things he said over the years. So, we don't need to relitigate it all. It's just, if you just find sexism offensive, you by definition, and disqualifying of John Ossoff, you can't be seriously a Trump supporter. It's a bit, and we know that people are not being serious and they're just being, trying to score points. But I still think it's worth saying. But also just in terms of whether it's okay to make a joke about her. I mean, just for what it's worth, I don't personally love the joke. It's a classic political stump speech line. I'm not a clapping seal, so I'm not the kind of person who's like, yay, got him. But in terms of whether it's okay to make a joke about her, I feel like it would be quite different if he'd made a joke like that about someone like Carolyn Leavitt, for example, who is even younger than Natalie Harp and attractive and blonde, but no one would say that she's not professional. She, by all accounts, was very good at that job. That job, press secretary, is not just talking to the press and spinning things for Trump. It's also managing relationships with the press, managing strategy. And when she quit that job, there were people from very liberal news outlets saying she was very good at that job, that she was very competent and professional. So if you made a joke like that, implying Trump was having an improper relationship with someone like Carolyn Leavitt, that would be sexist because it would be taking her less seriously because she's young and good looking, and impugning her professionalism based on her looks and gender and nothing else. Whereas Natalie Harp's relationship with Trump is self-evidently unprofessional. And I think we're going to talk to the letters that have come out. But, as I think those letters will demonstrate, the way that she does her job, which is a taxpayer-funded job, 150 grand a year, she gets paid to be his gatekeeper, talk with world leaders on his behalf, tweet for him or truth for him, be a gatekeeper for important people trying to reach him for important things. It's an important job. And by all accounts, she's an obsessive sycophant and is basically just traveling with him, telling him whatever he wants to hear, which is dangerous and worth critiquing and something you absolutely can make a joke about. And her personal relationship with him, I agree with you. I don't think I think there's no reason to assume it's sexual, but it's definitely unprofessional.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that is fair.
And so to impugn her professionalism is not inherently sexist, I don't think.
Yeah, no, look, I agree with that. I mean, I've got some thoughts which I'll add a little bit later on. I think that the fairer knock on some things that some people have said is not sexism, it's meanness. And I'll get to that. But you're right. We have a bit more to talk about first, though. Do you want to add anything before we get to the new stuff?
No, let's go.
Okay. All right, let's get into it. All right. Firstly, it's just more information about her that's come out before we even get to those letters. It was a long road to get where she is now. According to her brother, she's been obsessed with presidents for a long time. As Dave indicated last week, she did apparently write cringeworthy letters to George W. Bush back in the day. She was homeschooled, and apparently they taught her to be Republican very well. She apparently was into a lot of Republican politicians. And in 2013, she went to Jerry Falwell's. She was homeschooled, yes, as I mentioned that. In 2013, she went to Jerry Falwell's Christian Right University, Liberty University. She got an MBA. So, I mean, look, I'm not sure Liberty University is a real university, but like she's got a double degree because she had another degree before that. Her now deleted social media accounts show her becoming unsettlingly into Trump from 2016, basically straight away. She then fought her bone cancer in 2018, and she attributed her cure to Donald Trump, even though his policies had nothing to do with it. She wrote a LinkedIn article, and then Fox and Friends found her from the LinkedIn article where she attributed her recovery to Trump. They got her on Fox and Friends in July 2019 to thank Trump personally. And I've got a little bit of that footage right here.
Now, I mean, I'm working under President Trump.
Right.
People with disabilities are working in record numbers now. So we really are having a quality of life and being able to live like everyday people, even though we are fighting for our lives.
And Natalie, not only that, your expendable drugs and what happens with you is a study for somebody else coming next. Then you have the right to try it. It doesn't matter the money you have.
Exactly.
36 years in the Senate, 8 years as vice president, and now he says, I promise I'll cure cancer. Natalie says, I'm alive because we had a right to try over the last 2.5 years. Natalie Harp, glad you're okay. You look fantastic. Best of luck along the way.
Thank you. Thanks, Natalie. Thank you so much. And happy birthday, President Trump.
Yeah.
She certainly gave a little indication at the end there where she was heading in terms of her personality. Also, I love the little drive-by from Fox and Friends. Like they're just talking about the right to try law, and they just have to just stop down and go, oh, and Joe Biden, let's shit on him for trying to cure cancer. Why would you do that? Yeah, Joe Biden. Yeah. Obviously, that's how you get Trump's attention. They turn up on Fox and Friends. He gave her a job off the back of that interview. He made her a surrogate for his campaign. And then in 2020, her dad committed suicide, which she seems to mention quite a bit with Trump, which we'll get to again. I don't want to play amateur psychologist here, but I would not be surprised if he has become her father figure. There's a bit of ick about that, I think, which once again, it's not sexual at all.
There's a strange dynamic as well in that her brother is estranged from the family because Natalie and her mother don't acknowledge that it was a suicide.
Yeah.
And
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So the brother is an interesting character as well because he's very left wing and he's moved to Nicaragua to be the biographer of this activist who has been living in Nicaragua since he lost his legs campaigning against weapons going to the Contras. And so he's very left wing, but he's popped up to comment on this whole situation. But I believe that they became estranged off the back of the father dying and them not acknowledging the cause of death.
So it's probably fair to say that the entire family are interesting characters.
Yeah, I think it sounds complicated.
Yes, it does, yeah. On January 6, 2021, she's unusually worked up on Trump's behalf. And look at this tweet of hers and you'll see what I'm talking about. This has been dredged up. It was deleted. It's her tweeting, "Fight for Trump," in all caps with an American flag 12 times in a row in the one post. certainly foreshadowing the way she would soon be tweeting on Trump's behalf. That was a sign of what's to come. Yeah, so that was on January 6th, so she was pretty excited. She then worked for One American News Network for 2 years before joining Trump's staff in preparation for his 2024 campaign. What this means is, for all those who have suggested that she changed her appearance to look like Ivanka, and there's a lot of people on the internet suggesting that, there's a before and after going around, which a lot of people have. So as you can see there, she does look a lot different to what she used to look like, and now she looks a lot more like Ivanka. But maybe she wasn't going for the Mar-a-Lago look, but if she was doing it early, because you saw that Fox footage. That's one of the reasons I played that Fox footage before in 2019. She'd already dyed her hair and darkened her eyebrows, and she was well on the way to that look even then. And that was before she even knew Trump. So
it's as much the Fox look as anything.
Yeah.
It's someone who is not on TV getting a glow up and being a conservative TV presenter, which has its own long established look.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm not necessarily going to go the single white female vibe, which some people have. Some more details. On the weekend that just passed, we finally saw a photo of her running after Trump's golf cart in Scotland. The famous story of her chasing Trump's golf cart around. Yeah, here we are. As you can see, she's weirdly smiling while in full stride. But once again, no printer. I was imagining her carrying a printer. Where's the printer? Very disappointing. But what isn't an anticlimax is the other thing we got this weekend, as you foreshadowed, were the 2 letters that we heard a little quote from last week, but now we've got the full letters. Both of them were around the Scottish trip back in 2024. One was during the Scottish trip, the other was just after the Scottish trip. Shall we read them? Lucky, hit the backing music. She writes, I'm sorry if I was an embarrassment walking the course in Scotland. The first day I was told there were no carts and people walked, which is why I walked. The second day I was specifically asked by, I forgot who his name was, but one of the main people who worked there if I could continue walking and tell any other girls who would head out there to do the same, to spare the course any more carts. If there's anything else I've done to cause you trouble, please forgive me. I know that some people have said I haven't been texting them back and there have been some international cell issues. John was having technical issues on the plane too, so asked me to help him out. I want things to always be right between us. I also know I've been distracted all week, forgetting to eat throughout the days, even forgetting to sleep, and only catching a couple of hours at a time. I know the feeling, Natalie. I haven't been myself, dwelling on the past and the pain of losing my dad, and I started letting the remarks of people who haven't bothered me before get to me. Not because I care what others think, but because I see myself being lowered in your eyes and good opinion. That's the fear you see, because I never want to bring you anything but joy. I'm sorry I lost my focus. You are all that matters to me. I don't want to ever let you down. Thank you for being my guardian and protector in this life. That's what I wanted to use this card for when you saw me at the cash register. And once again did what you didn't have to do and gifted me with mementos of this trip of a lifetime, a coming of age. I'll return a better person. I have to sign off now as the cars are leaving. See you soon. With all my heart, Natalie. Thoughts, Melina?
I think that is not normal.
Hit it. Ooh, definitely not normal. I just want to read that bit which I went a bit louder on, just one more time. I never want to bring you anything but joy. I'm sorry I lost my focus. You're all that matters to me. I don't want to ever let you down. Thank you for being my guardian and protector in this life. That's what I wanted to use this card for when you saw me at the cash register. And once again, did what you didn't have to do and gifted me with mementos of this trip of a lifetime, a coming of age. Now, I would call that a red flag. Trump seemed to call that a qualification because he then gave her a better job. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on that one before we move to the other letter?
Let's do the other letter and we can do thoughts on both.
Dear Mr. President, now this is the note I wanted to write, but the apology needed to come first. I've learned so much about myself on this trip. I always knew coming home to my roots would be enlightening, but I had no idea how much. For the first time in I don't know how long, you forced me to unplug. We could be out on the course with no machines and even forget what time it was. I didn't have to be human printer. I could take time to enjoy good conversation and still get all my work done at the end of the day. In fact, I even had time to take long morning and evening walks to enjoy each sunrise and sunset, though I did forget to eat and sleep. With so much thinking time, I confess it did have a slightly negative effect at times that I know you picked up on, but the end result, I believe, will be worth it. I had no idea how rapidly I was approaching burnout and starting to envy those whose only job seems to be to talk with you and look pretty. I want that job. That wasn't subtle, folks. So many times, I'm just trying to stay afloat with all that's coming in for you. I look like a hunchback who didn't have time to freshen up. At least you know what I should look like. Sorry, time out. Did you get that? Trump knows what she should look like, apparently. I am neck deep in ick. Let's continue. Plus, I miss the days when you used to call during my talk show days and we'd talk about everything and nothing. I wanted to get back to that synergy. We shouldn't have to talk about work all the time. Yeah, that's a strange thing for an employee to say. We shouldn't have to talk about work all the time. Let's go on. I've always felt like an in-betweener, somewhere between staff and those you enjoy talking to on the plane or at dinner, because that's how I used to be to you when I was a talk show host, as much as I hated that actual job. I wish I could hear every conversation, because that's when you're having a good time, getting away from it all, at least for a few moments. But after going through all this self-analysis, my conclusion? I need to reunite my past self with my current into a better version who'll make you proud. And please, when I fail, will you tell me? Yeah, I think you will. You have the absolute right to cuss me out, if need be, when I deserve it, because no one knows or cares about me more. I bet her mum is very pleased to read that. Thank you for always being there for me. I'll never forget when you made that promise to me after losing my dad, and I know how happy he is right now that I did get to go to Scotland and Ireland, as he always wanted for me. To modify a classic, I could not have parted with you to anyone less worthy. And I will add, it is I who is unworthy. Always, Natalie. P.S. My hands look worse in Scotland and Ireland because the cold turns old scars purple. Still on the road to recovery. Sorry, before you jump in here, Melina, I just want to underline that Trump apparently had to go at her about her hands not looking good. This is the guy who has spent the last 5 years permanently wearing thick concealer on both his hands to stop us from seeing his massive, disturbing bruises. He's having to go at other people's hands being discoloured.
He probably thinks she should be using concealer.
Maybe. Anyway, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Trump says that she's the only person who loves him as much as his family does and wife. His family and wife are not writing to him like that.
No. I don't think Eric is.
And I mean, yeah, again, like, this is not a professional, whatever it is, this is not a professional relationship.
Yes.
Like, you and I have worked together and been close friends for over a decade.
Don't read our letters.
We do not write to each other. Things like this.
No,
we
don't.
send each other video links and say, ha, 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 ha. That's as blurry as a line gets. Like, this is not how people talk to it. This is not how even normal people who are in a relationship talk to each other. Like, it's toxic no matter what lens you put on it. And it's very disturbing. And even if, like, we don't see how he talks to her, but even if this is just her being obsessive and maybe unhinged, he's still keeping her around. Like, she's not being discouraged from behaving this way. So what does that say about him? Yeah. Nothing good.
No, I totally agree. I hadn't even thought about that. If my wife wrote me that letter, I was booking her straight into an MRI for her brain. Immediately. What's going on?
I am not worthy. I mean, what?
She's losing oxygen. Quick, get the scans on. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It is, I in all honesty, reading that letter, that second letter, the first letter was a bit shit. The second letter actually bothered me. Like, yeah, I could just go, to make a reference which not everyone will get. I was reading that thinking, did Trump break a one wish willow? Like it's just like it feels like a voodoo curse, you know? Like it has abuse of power written all over it. Well, that letter is the reason why teachers aren't supposed to date students. Because of that. That's why. Because some people, they romanticize authority and they attach to authority and they can't get past it.
Yes, no, the power dynamics that she herself is explicitly laying out in terms of like being unworthy and doing everything for him. And as you say, like him being the one who knows what she's supposed to look like it's just a letter of red flags. Like every line is a red flag. Yeah,
no, this is an entire airport of red flags from the signaling guys. It's also, and I don't want to be a smartass about this. This is slightly smartassy, but I'm also a little bit serious. It's also why a bit more socialization as a kid isn't a bad thing, rather than being homeschooled. Because, like, I bet you if she went to school and had to deal with bullies all through school, she wouldn't be writing letters like that to her boss when she was 33. You know, it's
yeah, and I mean, as you're kind of like a lot of it's so ridiculous that we are kind of laughing along. But as we're saying this, I was sort of having the thought of like, you know, like there is something quite disturbing in the letters, and you know, like I don't like. You know, clearly her father had serious mental health issues, and so that that doesn't automatically mean that she has them, obviously. But you know, there's a question of like, is this person unwell in some way, which we can't know from the letter. But you know, I had pause to think, you know, like I don't want to be insensitive to someone who is unwell, but then you have to consider it again in the context of who this person is, what her job is, and how Trump, as the president of America, is receiving this behavior. And so again, I think the biggest critique goes back to him as someone who is seeking out people who behave in this way to him as a positive rather than as something to be really concerned about.
Yeah, 100%. I could not agree more. She is not the villain. She has done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Like, she's doing her best. I mean, look, I think she's got all kinds of problems, but that's not her fault. Like, she's doing the best she can. As far as she's concerned, she's trying to serve her country.
Yeah.
She's the victim of Trump's bottomless well of neediness and his complete inability to hold a position of responsibility. He just can't do it in any capacity. Like, 'cause it's always him first. He doesn't care about his underlings. He doesn't care about anyone else. Like, it's a complete indictment of him, not of her. And so I do think we should critique what we're seeing, but I don't think we should blame her for it. We should blame, I agree with you, the fact that she's been placed in this position.
Yeah, and if you get back to the original comment that kicked off this whole wave of reporting in the first place that Ossoff made, it was, like, I mean, you know, it was a cheeky jab that was obviously implying that they were having an affair. So I don't want to pretend that it wasn't that. But the point that he was making was about Trump's priorities and the fact that he wants to just have these vanity projects with the Ballroom and be surrounded by these, like, obsequious people who just tell him what he wants to hear rather than facing the reality that he's gotten America into a war with no plan that's just going completely sideways in predictable ways and is having all of these terrible effects in America and around the world. And that was the original point he was trying to make. And I think that point is really valid.
It was 100% about Trump. Like that section went for 2.5 minutes and 3 words were about Natalie Harp and the rest were about Trump.
Yeah.
It was about Trump. And by the way, I don't accept that he was trying to insinuate they're having an affair. Like, maybe he was. But when I heard it, I didn't take it that way. So it's possible he was. It's possible he wasn't. I'm certainly not going to assume he was. Like, when I first heard that, I thought, oh, yeah, he's talking about Trump and his chief sycophant. Like, because we all know who she was. She's a Twitter person, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's code for the pathetic Twitter... The pathetic Twitter / true social world you live in, you hide in, rather than doing your job.
Yeah, and there has been more reporting around her. Like, it's not just because she's like the attractive woman in the, because other people were on the catering truck, but they're not like, Natalie Harp and her role is reported on in Regime Change, which obviously is just all over the press at the moment, Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's book. And she just does pop up in reporting. She's more infamous. Like, I was surprised when I heard the reporting around the whole plane thing and was like, oh, Walt Nauta is still around. Like, I had no idea that he was still in the picture and traveling with Trump. So whereas with Natalie, I was like, oh, yeah. Of course, she's always with him. I kind of knew that. So I think she is just more in the public consciousness in general.
Yeah. Now we get to the point which I was alluding to before, where I'm personally uncomfortable. Because I don't mind critiquing the role she plays and stuff like that. But you'll notice I haven't mentioned how she looks at all, other than talk about the fact that she changed her look way before. That's the only time I mention how she looks. I'm hating how much Twitter is focusing on her looks. It's a lot. I'm really hating that. Like, obviously she's intense and she's probably not stable. But there is nothing, she's just a normal person. She's a perfectly normal looking 36-year-old woman. And her job is to scour the internet for Trump. That's her job. So she can't get away from this shit. All this stuff that we're seeing, like all the Mean Girl bullshit, she sees every one of them. That's her job. And we know she does her job thoroughly. So she's seeing all of this, every single nasty comment and every single personal comment. And I hate that. Like I said, it's not her fault. And by the way as well, remember every story we're hearing is leaked by Trump people. None of this is coming from Democrats. Every one of these stories, the Scotland, the trunk, the letters, everything is from Trump people, probably jealous Trump people.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and she knows that. She's not, like she might be strangely attached to Trump, but she seems to be competent at what she does. So she's probably not dumb. And she's probably well aware that her enemies are looking at her all the time. They're surrounding her. And she goes on the internet to see the results of her enemies, of their work as part of her job. That must be horrible. Like, she must right now, especially given that she's not too stable to begin with, probably, she must right now just be in a horrible position. And so it really sort of grinds my gears when I'm seeing people, like people are tweeting out awful photos of her and go, oh, she looks like a horse. Like, you've seen the one where she's laughing mid-laugh. This is just normal. That's just a normal photo of someone laughing. And that's everywhere going, oh, she looks like a horse. No, everyone looks like when they're like that when they're laughing. Like, it's easy just to go, yeah, well, that's the internet. It's not just her. Like, it's superficial. I get that. But I reckon right now she's really going through the gauntlet. And I think it'd be nice if we didn't have to be quite so personal. And as you say, locate where the blame is, which is Trump.
Yeah.
Got any other thoughts?
No.
No. Okay. I got a quick update on the ballroom. I speculated last week the Supreme Court were probably going to let the ballroom happen by saying the plaintiffs had no standing. But I showed my sweet summer innocence right there, folks. Because it didn't even occur to me that as soon as the pod was recorded, Chief Justice Roberts was going to hand down an extraordinary ruling, which we're going to now spend a few hours on, if you don't mind. Let's look at it in all its glory. Are you ready for this one? I'll read it. I'll read it all. Strap yourself in. Upon consideration of the application of counsel of the applicants, the response and the reply filed thereto, it is ordered that the preliminary injunction entered on April 16, 2026 by the United States District Court for the District of Columbia is hereby stayed pending further order of the undersigned or of the court. That's the entire judgment. It's like War and Peace all over again. He basically said, I don't know why I'm translating it. It's pretty short. But he basically said the freeze on Trump building the ballroom no longer in place until we say otherwise. That's it. Why? He doesn't say. Will the Supreme Court actually hear the case? He doesn't say. How long will it take them to decide if they're going to hear the case? He doesn't say. He just says, until we feel like it, Trump can do whatever he likes. Great. And of course, Trump's now going to finish the construction of the ballroom as fast as he possibly can. And so this case is going to be completely pointless. And it won't matter what the Supreme Court has to say at all because the thing's going to be built.
Yeah, and rushing construction in Washington has never backfired for Trump.
That's a great point. I do want to make a quick important point here, though. The Supreme Court is not meant to be striking down injunctions from lower courts unless the injunction is harming someone. We've kind of forgotten this because the Supreme Court's now doing it all the time. They've just completely started to ignore harm. Apart from Justice Jackson, who this is her hobby horse about. It's in her interest for this to be her hobby horse because she's usually opposing these moves. But still, she, to her credit, keeps on mentioning the harm aspect. In particular, if they're doing someone irreparable harm, then you're supposed to stay the injunction. How is it doing Trump irreparable harm if he has to pause his construction for a few weeks or maybe months while the Supreme Court decides how they're going to proceed? Especially given Trump doesn't even need to pause. The injunction allows him to keep on building all the security bits of the ballroom. It just doesn't allow him to build the ballroom part. So he could keep on going. All this is doing is giving Trump a license to try to race the Supreme Court to make a mockery of their supposed supervision. So this is super bullshit from John Roberts. He might think he's being clever, ruling for Trump without ruling for Trump. But to me, this just adds to that sense of double standard that the people who are trying to defend this court, like me, become paralyzed by it. Because you just go, how can you defend that? Like, it's just so negligent. You know, it's just shameless. Got any thoughts on this?
Well, just the one thing I thought when you were talking about this in the last pod is, like, I understand why generally their instinct is to try and not pick fights with Trump, like this court, and that's generally been what they're doing whenever they can. So in that sense, it's not surprising that they've ruled for Trump. But on the other hand, they themselves are in a position to be irritated by the hypocrisy because the Supreme Court are having to go to Congress right now to ask for more money for their security.
Yeah.
Because there's been this huge uptick in threats against Supreme Court members. They feel like they want more security precautions in place. They have to go to Congress and ask for the money before they get it. Doesn't matter if their life is in danger or not, or the urgency of it, they still have to ask.
They do.
And so they should know, that should be front of mind for them because it's happening right now.
Yeah.
And that they're happy to give Trump a pass to be like, oh, well, if it's security, I guess you can have it.
It's so frustrating.
It is frustrating.
I saw a Marquette poll about a week ago, and I never got around to mentioning in the last PEP. It said 63% of Republicans now believe the Supreme Court rarely or never rules for Trump. Rarely or never. 63% of Republicans say that. That's up from 55% in May. So it's moved from being a majority of Republicans who think that to a large majority of Republicans who think that the Supreme Court rarely or never rules for Trump. Hey, Republicans, you're wrong.
All politics is just vibes.
The court rules for Trump an awful lot. Hey, look, I'm the first to mention, and I have many times, there are like 5 or 6 times during this term where they've ruled against Trump big time. But that leaves a very large number of times when they've ruled in favour, and in particular for moments like this, subtle ways where Trump doesn't even realise they ruled for him. He's got no idea. This went over his head. Ugh, it's so frustrating. Lincoln update. We do need to correct Dr. Dave from last week. When he was talking about the Trump-class battleships, the big battleships, which are never going to get made, he implied they were going to cost $275 billion. That's the entire 30-year program. It's going to cost $275 billion as budgeted. The CBO estimates the first ship is going to cost $23 billion. Still not cheap. It's like 10 times other ships. But from then on, the ships would theoretically average out at about $18 billion each in 2026 dollars. That's if they were ever built, which they're not going to be. So let's not worry about that. But I did want to correct myself because I don't like being wrong. Also, I need to clarify something that I was struggling a little bit with. I didn't necessarily get this wrong, but I was just a bit confused because everyone was confused on this one. The difference between a full deployment and how long the Lincoln went without docking. Those are different things. And how long the Lincoln went without any refreshments whatsoever. That's another different thing. And news article after news article was just conflating all three of them. And it was getting very confusing. So that I was taking stabs at what the numbers were last week. I just thought, no, I've got to get to the bottom of this. So I did. Pretty sure I've got the real numbers now. The entire deployment was 272 days. That's the entire trip. That's not a record. The USS Gerald Ford set that record earlier this year with 326 days. A lot of people were saying it went that whole period without a port call. I saw that in a lot of news articles, including New York Times. What they mean by that is that the sailors remained on duty and did not touch land outside the restricted area, but it was in a port. That's confusing to me. The Lincoln did stop at a port twice. It stopped for 7 hours in Guam in December, and it stopped for 18 hours in Oman in July. Apparently, those don't count as port calls because the sailors needed to recharge by walking around a bit, and they didn't get that opportunity. They were kept in a restricted area. Finally, that is not the only time that their supplies were replenished when they were at port. You can replenish a ship while it's sailing, and they often are. But it took a lot longer to replenish the Lincoln than normal because all the nearby ports were under attack from Iran, as described. The ships could still be replenished to a certain extent, not with everything because there's only so much you can carry on a replenishment mission, but they replenished to a certain extent with a 10-day mission. Normally, it's 2 to 3 days, but in this case, they could do it over 10 days. So there were replenishments during that period. Not nearly as many as they needed. There are all kinds of problems going on, but it's not like they were cut off, which was the impression you would have gotten from reading news articles last week. So I just want to just make that very clear. You draw your own conclusions how you feel about all that. Apparently, it's very important for the sailors to get some time walking around on land, and they didn't get that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I hate being on boats.
Yeah.
I want to be on land after 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But also, in terms of that time, I did see in the reporting, and it makes sense as soon as you start to think about it, just things like fresh food. You can only have that for like a week or something, like not very long before, certainly like 10 days after that, you're just on canned food. So yeah, you can, like there's food, but the quality of what you're getting to eat, if you're not regularly getting replenishments, from nearby ports, deteriorates very quickly. And that was definitely a factor in terms of morale.
Yeah. Okay, enough of all that. Melina, you have a lot to tell us about. I want to talk about the midterms. And when I said to you I want to talk more about the midterms, you said to me, let's talk about data centers. And I thought that is a great suggestion because data centers could be the sleeper issue of these midterms. We all know about affordability, but this one's building. So why don't you tell us all about it?
Yeah, so this is a pretty big topic because it covers both data centers and AI more broadly. But both of these things are becoming absolutely toxic, and it is clearly becoming a big issue in the midterm elections, and more so every day. The reporting, I just seeing it go up and up. Republicans have started to send out emergency signals on it as well. So the committee that campaigns to elect Republicans in the Senate sent out a private memo to top AI companies, and it was then leaked to Axios, who reported on it. And they say that the incumbent Republican in Ohio, which is John Husted, is falling behind Democrat Sherrod Brown off the back of this issue. That's what they say. The memo says, more than any other thing in this race, data centers are the anchor hanging around Husted's neck. If he loses and data centers get the blame, politicians across the country will take notice and they will not go near the next one. So Brown is polling 8 points ahead of Husted right now. This is a crucial state for the midterms.
And this is Ohio, where Trump won by like 10 points.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Sherrod Brown was already competitive, but Republicans are trying to push it back on AI companies to justify themselves and push back on the messaging around data centers to help Republicans who are copping heat on it, especially in Ohio. And so, again, from the memo, they say campaigns or party committees cannot fix the toxic brand of an entire segment of the economy. The companies that need these projects built have to fix how Ohioans see them, who benefits, who pays, and why a community should want one. Until that happens, the issue will continue to dominate this race. If it is still this potent in November, elected officials everywhere will treat Ohio as their reason to work against data centers in the future. If voters' perceptions of data centers are not fixed quickly, then campaign against them will expand far beyond Ohio. I would say to that, it's a joke to pretend it hasn't expanded beyond Ohio already, as we will detail.
Before you expand, should we have a look at some of these ads that show Brown is running against Houston?
He's been called the face of data centers in Ohio. Why? Because John Husted spent years aggressively recruiting data centers to the state, cutting sweetheart tax deals and fast-tracking approvals, while ordinary residents watch their electricity bills explode.
We are here with Ohio Senator John Husted. We have a lot of experience with something called data centers.
John Husted. Who's he really working for?
So what that ad has in common with every other ad I've seen from Show Brown about this, and there are many, is every single time he's blaming John Husted and the data centers for electricity prices going up.
Yes, yes, and we'll get to a lot more detail on that later. But yeah, I mean, I would say we should acknowledge there's a bit of self-interest here from Republicans, because I feel that if Republicans lose Ohio, Trump's handling of the economy and the war in Iran and many other issues probably have a bit to do with it as well. I don't think that this will be the only, retaliatory tariffs that are now going to explicitly target swing states. So I don't think it would be right to say that it's only because of data centers. And I'm sure this is also partly about imploring very rich companies to splash some cash in these races to try and help them out. But I definitely think it's a real thing that data centers are a significant issue in the midterms around the country, definitely not just in Ohio. And you can see it because politicians are changing their positions in a panic. So Kathy Hochul in New York back in July put a year-long pause on construction of large data centers. She was one of the earlier ones to come out against data centers. At that time, Trump truthed, Governor Kathy Hochul, for political reasons, has terminated all data centers being built or to be built in New York State. These companies are now being sought in Alabama, Florida, Texas, Arizona, and many other states. Both the taxes and jobs amount to liquid gold. New York State has made a terrible decision. All of this income and other benefits will be going to red states, and some blue, where data centers are sought as cash cows with lower taxes and record-setting jobs. That's about half of it, but we'll stop there.
Yeah, sure. Liquid gold.
So he mentioned Texas. Less than a month after that, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas announced a moratorium on the approval of new data centers, pending an audit looking into how much water and electricity they're using and where that water and electricity is coming from, which are things that I would suggest you should be aware of before you approve them in the first place. But he's now going harder and harder in this about face. And just the other day, he was criticizing the rapid build out of data centers coupled with developers' failure to get community support. And Abbott himself is now saying they basically dug their own grave for the problem that's been caused for them. And that's why they got the backlash they deserve. This is from the governor that last year announced a $40 billion investment from Google in November last year, calling Texas the epicenter of AI development. So that's some pretty furious backpedaling, I would suggest. But in the spirit of bipartisanship, it's not just Greg Abbott who's furiously backpedaling. So to take a Democrat example, in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro was one of the more pro-data center Democrats, and he is now also furiously backpedaling. Last year, he was going out of his way to attract data centers to Pennsylvania. He appeared with Amazon officials to announce a $20 billion investment in his state. And he's up for re-election in November as well, which is probably relevant to his new positioning on the issue. His opponent is running attack ads. His Republican opponent is running attack ads accusing him of taking $5 million in donations from out-of-state data center developers. That number is a bit of a fudge because it's counting any money that comes from anyone who's remotely connected to AI in any way, not just data centers specifically. But, it's not out of the realm of fairness, I suppose. And Shapiro has now signed an executive order removing data centers from their fast-track permitting program, requiring companies to pay for all their electricity costs, getting a significant portion of their power from clean energy, and mandatory local approval for any new projects. And he's also saying tough guy stuff about controversial projects like this.
I'm a hell no on that project. I'm a hell no on many other projects across Pennsylvania, and they will not happen on my watch.
Whoa.
He's a hell no. That's so tough.
That's a tough guy. He's cursing.
He hates data centers sometimes.
It's funny how the Democrats about 18 months ago, they decided that they were all going to start swearing to be tough, and this is the Josh Shapiro version of that, to say hell no.
I'm shivering. It's very strong.
Yes.
But Pennsylvania is a great example of how this issue is really scrambling partisan lines, because you've got in the governor's race the Republican challenger trashing Shapiro for being too pro data centers. But meanwhile, there's a House seat in the midterms that's one of the key focuses for Dems to pick up, that's got a Republican incumbent, where the Democratic challenger is trashing the Republican incumbent for being too pro data centers, because it's one of the seats where there is a concentration of the data centers in Pennsylvania. So you've got basically whoever is the less vulnerable on the issue going the person who is more vulnerable on the issue. And we were talking about this is the case in Wisconsin as well.
Do you want me to talk to that?
Yeah, you can talk to that.
Because that is a mess. Okay, so obviously Francesca Hong, the socialist candidate in the Democratic primary, was running on a full moratorium. Again, to stop like the Bernie Sanders style complete moratorium on data centers. Now, Crowley, the guy who ended up winning the primary, he is an ally of Tony Evers. Tony Evers was the guy who got all the data centers into Wisconsin in the first place by offering huge tax benefits. This is like 2 years ago. And now Wisconsin is one of the places with the most data centers as a result of these tax benefits. But also its climate's good because it's cool. Like that's one of the problems with data centers. You got to keep them cool right next to lakes. So there's lots of water, lots of fresh water, which is handy as well. So it's a good place for them. But basically, you got a situation where, at least according to Marquette, 76% of Wisconsin voters now say data centers costs outweigh their benefits. And so you've got Crowley, who originally was an ally of Evers, desperately trying to attract all the data centers in. And you got Tom Tiffany, who's his opponent, his Republican opponent, who voted specifically to stop regulations on data centers a few years back. And now both of them are trying to reinvent themselves as tough guys, and they're trying to out-tough each other when they both have a horrible record if you want to be tough on data centers. So let me go into details here for you. Okay, so first of all, the tax subsidies we're talking about here, they exempted them completely from sales taxes. So what that means is no taxes at all, really, on construction materials, on IT equipment, on power infrastructure, on cooling systems, on electricity, and zero sunsetting. There are some places like Illinois, for instance, where they have the similar kind of thing, but only for a few years, and then you start paying taxes. No, in Wisconsin, you're free of those taxes forever. And according to the Wisconsin Legislative Fiscal Bureau, they are poised to forgo up $1.5 billion in sales tax revenue alone just during the construction of the data center projects, and then another $370 million annually a year forever because of these incentives. Now, they are still going to pay property taxes and corporate taxes and income taxes, but that's a lot of sales tax they're not paying. And so, yeah, and Crowley originally, there's a quote which Tom Tiffany keeps on citing, where he said he wants Wisconsin to become a global leader in artificial intelligence. And, yeah, we got ya. Right, okay, so now Crowley is saying that Tom Tiffany, is pro data centers because he voted for the tax cuts that benefited big tech in the Big Beautiful Bill. He voted for reforms that made data centers easier to build, and he voted for a ban on state and local AI regulations. That's all as a congressman. And Tiffany is also an ally of Donald Trump, who, as we've established, is a big fan of data centers. So that's what they're attacking each other on. But their positions are almost identical. This is what they both say. They both don't favour a statewide moratorium completely. They both say that every Wisconsin community should have veto power over any data center project within its territory. They both say data centers must pay the full price of their energy needs. They both say that companies should not be allowed to enter into non-disclosure agreements. With local governments from the public. They both say that they're not fans of AI anymore. The differences are Crowley wants to require data center projects to finance new renewable energy because he's a Democrat, so he's into renewable energy, and Tom Tiffany's not. Tiffany wants them to run on coal instead. That's the difference. And Tiffany has promised to end all taxpayer subsidies, all those sales tax breaks and stuff. He's promised to end all of them for data centers in Wisconsin. Crowley is not promising to end all the tax subsidies, but he is criticising Tiffany for voting for tax incentives in the first place. So even though Tiffany's now saying, I'll end all tax incentives, and Crowley's saying he's not, Crowley's criticising Tiffany for voting for tax incentives in the first place. So that's very, very confused.
It's weird the Republican is the one who wants to raise the taxes.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is where they're at, as you say. And if you're going, well, why isn't Crowley just dropping all the incentives? The reason why is because the union doesn't want him to drop all the incentives, because the union has a great little situation here in union jobs from construction of data centers. And so they want to keep on encouraging them. And so he's not in the pocket of AI or big data center. He's in the pocket of the union. But Tom Tiffany is acting like he just loves AI. And so he's running all these attack ads about how he's Mr. Data Center David Crowley, I think they call him.
They do. And that is the other key difference. Only one of them sounds catchy when you call them Data Center David Crowley. Data Center Tom Tiffany.
No, it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
So anyway, so it's just a complete mess. But at the end of the day, their policies are almost identical. Oh yeah, I should say David Crowley has all these regulations he wants to pass to make it harder, to the point where there's probably not going to be any more data centers anyway. And there won't be if Tom Tiffany gets rid of all the sales and tax incentives. So both of them are going to end up with the same situation, which is no more data centers. They're basically identical, but they're spending the whole campaign trying to act that the other one just loves data centers when they're very, very similar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So why is this happening? Why are politicians suddenly talking about this, scrambling their positions, everything?
Why?
Largely because people really hate data centers. Really. And we should put some actual numbers behind it nationally. So from Gallup in March, they found 71% of Americans are opposed to the construction of data centers in their area, including 48% who are strongly opposed. And interestingly, the partisan breakdown was 75% of Democrats opposed, 74% of independents, so basically the same, 63% of Republicans. So a bit less, but still
pretty similar.
A pretty big majority.
Yeah.
So you don't get many issues in politics where there is this strong sentiment in one direction. But it's also interesting that the ground has been shifting really quickly on this. So Heat Map News, which is a group focused on climate change, but they just asked a pretty neutral question, basically saying, would you support or oppose a data center being built near where you live? And they've been tracking it over time. In August last year, they found 43% supported data centers being built near them, with 42% opposed. So basically even.
Yep.
Now, in August 2026, so just a year later, they found 14% who would support a data center being built near them and 75% opposed, with 61% strongly opposed. So it's just completely flipped.
69%.
61% strongly opposed.
That's still huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. From being basically even to being nearly everyone hates this and most people feel strongly about it.
By the way, I already mentioned this a couple of weeks back, but I'll mention it again because you'd mentioned the Gallup poll. That, as he said, 71% was opposing the construction of data centers in their area, the peak of anti-nuclear power paranoia was in 2001. 63% opposed the construction of nuclear power plants in their area. So it's 8% more than nuclear power plants at the peak of anti-nuclear feelings.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So why do they hate them so much?
Hang on, before you go on, can I give you one poll which I found interesting as well? And this does lead into possibly what you're talking about. Well, well, maybe a little bit. This is from Puck News. People happy to build wind farms in their community, 61% to 30% unhappy. People happy to build a chip manufacturing plant in their community, 49% happy to 35% unhappy. People happy to build a data center to power digital services in their community, 35% happy, 53% unhappy. People happy to build a nuclear power plant in their community, basically identical numbers, 34% happy, 57% unhappy. People happy to build a data center to power AI in their community, 27% happy to 62% unhappy. So there's, what's that? That's a 17-point swing. When it's exactly the same data center, just one is supplying power for just the internet, and the other one's supplying power for AI.
Yes. So, there are issues which we'll get into, like physically with the data centers themselves. But, there is obviously a lot of conjecture that this is a proxy for anti-AI sentiment in general. And that's one thing that establishes that. And, AI is also polling very badly and trending in the wrong direction. So let's look a little bit at that as well before getting into the physical problems with data centers. So the percentage of Americans who say increased use of AI in daily life makes them feel more concerned than excited. So they're leaning towards more concerned about it than they are excited about it. It was 37% in 2021 and it's 52% in 2026. Okay. Only 9% of people are more excited than concerned about AI use in daily life. Wow. Everyone else is equally concerned and excited.
9%.
They also found 71% of Americans think AI will lead to fewer jobs over the next 20 years. So it's no secret why that's a political loser.
Yeah.
And young people hate it the most.
Oh, I know that.
So 48% of 18 to 29 say AI will have a negative impact on society over the next 20 years compared to 35% for over 65s.
Can I just say, I don't say much about my daughters because I like to keep them private, but one of them is getting oldish now. So she's getting to the point where I can mention her. Like she's in year 11, right? So she's getting there. Her and her friends, they despise AI with a passion that I have not seen people despise anything, like anything else. They just like when there's like an AI screensaver or something, or my wife will put on dog TV sometimes for our dogs. That's just how obsessed we are with our dogs. And if there's an AI generated dog video, like my daughter will start cursing under her breath. She gets so angry. She's just infuriated just by AI being anywhere near her. It's just, the kids do not like AI.
Yeah, which is interesting because if this is the future, they're the ones that will have to live with it more than anybody else. And it's so different, the vibe around AI now to the vibe around the early internet, I think. Like, you remember when Google came on the scene and said their motto was "Don't be evil," and we were all like, "Oh wow, that's awesome! What good guys! The future is bright." And now everyone is like so grim and so pessimistic about what this all means for us. Tech bros are not getting the benefit of the doubt these days about their intentions. Just to add to it, 61% of 18 to 29s think AI will make people's ability to think creatively worse, and 58% think it will be worse in terms of people's ability to form meaningful relationships with other people. So I do think there's like a general sense among everyone, but I think more so with young people that, all of the kind of like something's kind of gone quite wrong in society since the digital age came upon us, and that there are a lot of problems that we're just kind of, trying to disentangle now from, what is good and functional about the internet and social media in particular, and what is quite toxic and damaging, and where we've maybe gone astray as a people and need to make changes. And I think for young people in particular, like, I kind of feel like I'm in the last cohort that remembers not having the internet, but also, you know, has lived now more of my life with it than without it. And I think for people who are just born completely into that age, they really only, like, you know, the benefits are just life. It's just normal life. And all the downsides are things that are hurting them. Like, they don't remember what it's like to, like, you know, just not remember, like, not, I was trying to think the other day, how did I used to get places? Like, how did I get anywhere? I used to look at things up in a street directory and cross-reference with a bus timetable, and then I had to try and remember. Like,
you know how I get mocked by many of our friends, our common friends, about my backpack that I carry around like a tortoise shell. I used to have a Gregory's in there. Yeah. I literally used to have a street directory I carry in my bag all the time when I was a kid. I
just got lost. Didn't go many places. But, like, you know, like the first time I went overseas, I would go to an internet cafe to, you know, let my parents know that I was still alive. Like, it was just, you know, and I had, like a, you know, travel guide book that was like the size of a Bible, like lugging it around, like trying to figure out where am I going to stay? So, you know, obviously there are lots of things about the internet that have been really good. Yeah. But there are also things that, you know, and I think about this a lot having very young kids, like just trying to think about like the difference between their experiences growing up and mine, and how to navigate the digital age and how to help them navigate it, and all the kind of new problems that they're going to have to deal with that I didn't have to deal with. And like just something like, you know, like, for me, I watched TV when TV was on. You know, there was a time of day when kids' shows were on. And if I was lucky, I got to watch those shows at those times. But then it's over. Whereas with kids now, you're constantly having to negotiate. Like, you're the one who's in charge of whether they're watching the screen or not. And they always want to be on screens. And it's like, even that is just different. That, like, you have to figure out how to set a boundary, which, like, my parents didn't have to figure out to the same extent. Just little things like that just change people's experience of life.
It's very, very obvious that you didn't watch TV like I watched TV when you were a kid. When you say that, I wasn't watching cartoons when I was 7 or 8. I was watching, you know, Cagney and Lacey. I was watching cop shows and stuff.
I was watching Bewitched and Get Smart and all those things that rerun as well. But, you know, it's just like, for my kids, it's like the younger one is a baby, but the older one is like, you know, she doesn't have any sense of there's any restriction. She just, you know, can watch anything anytime if I let her. Right. And so it's just, it's very different dynamic between like having infinite choice versus like, you know, prescriptive monocultures. Anyway, we're getting dangerously close to tangent treehouse territory. But
I'm sure Lockie's already been playing.
The point is that for young people, they are very cognizant of the downsides that they have experienced through modern technology, and potentially less kind of cognizant of the benefits, because the benefits are just, you know, a given in life. And I think there's a lot of dread about AI and what it's going to mean for them.
I think that's a great call. I am also cognizant of the fact we do have to move on, so I'm not going to drag you down too much here. But I just want to put one thing on the record. I predict there is going to be one hell of a generation gap between the kids who are, say, 5 to 10 years old now and the generation below them. Because the generation below them grow up with AI being their nannies and their friends. And
God, I don't know how I feel about that.
But you can't stop it. It's going to happen. And their concept of what socialization is going to be like will be so different. Like, I think that is going to be the hugest generation gap between kids who despise AI and kids who are AI. There's going to be a huge gap. Like, I promise you, like the boomers versus millennials and all that kind of shit. It's going to be nothing compared to the kids who haven't been born yet versus the kids who have just been born now. Anyway, go on.
All right. Let's talk about data centers specifically and why people say that they're bad. Because there are a lot of issues that people raise. For starters, this is just a big change that's happening. It's the biggest capital project in human history, apparently, which is going to be impactful for people. People are going to notice.
The number I saw was $7 trillion.
Yeah.
It's projected by 2030.
So the general criticisms you hear, they use a lot of power, and that can drive up local electricity costs. I saw 4.4% of U.S. electricity in 2023 went to data centers.
Yep.
It's forecast to be 12% by 2030.
Yep.
They use a lot of water. This is slightly more overstated. It's 1% of what's used for irrigation for agriculture, for example. But precious water infrastructure is a problem in America, so these things still have an impact. They take up a lot of land. There are concerns about the impact they have on the surrounding environment. Local residents complain about loud, constant humming. There's a lack of transparency about how these are being rolled out and the deals that are being done. A lot of local governments have signed NDAs about them. The governor of Louisiana signed an NDA with Meta, which requires the state to seek protective orders to block disclosures required under public record laws. And also the NDA includes the existence of the NDA.
Yeah, the NDA is shit.
So when and I know NDAs are very widely used in many companies and definitely in tech companies, but people in the general community are distrustful of these companies when they go out of their way to hide what they're doing.
Can I make a couple of points on these, or are you going to come back to them?
I'm going to make a few more points about water and energy.
Okay. All right. Well,
jump in.
Okay. Well, the first thing I was going to say is when it comes to land use, let's distinguish between the land they're on and the land of the buildings. The land they're on is much bigger than the land of the buildings, precisely because of what you just said about the noise. They do tend to have quite a lot of land between the buildings and the general community. But even if you take the land of the broader land, that's still by 2028 is projected to 1,400 square miles, which is 0.3% as much as America's farmland. So it's not like taking over the whole place, right? And that's the big areas. If you're taking just the buildings, it's 0.005% of America's farmland. That's just the buildings, but we should take the whole lot. The noise thing, I looked up the noise because I was interested in that. It seems like that the hum is somewhere, depending on what kind of data center, the hum is somewhere between 40 and 59 decibels. The way people were talking, I was reading about this low constant hum of the cooling equipment, how it's annoying birds, and I just thought, this reminds me of Trump talking about wind power. So I had to look up, what's the noise of windmills? And the noise of windmills is 35 to 45 decibels. So, this is louder, not by much. Like it's like next generation maybe, they might be comparable. So I'm not personally not too worried about that. If you had more points to make about energy and water, then make them, and then I'll
sure. Yeah, it's worth drilling down on the water and energy aspects because there's a lot of argument on both sides about it. Like I've heard data centers use insane amounts of power and water, and I've heard other people say, "Oh, it's the same as what Netflix uses, and it's the same water as a golf course." And when I was like, "Well, what is it then?" I sort of realized, it kind of feels obvious when you say it, but like, it depends because data centers come in all different designs and sizes. Some are small, some are as big as football stadiums, some have modest energy usage, some use more energy than small cities. There are thousands of data centers across America already that have been operating uncontroversially for years. They are used for everything on the internet. But the ones that the major AI companies are building are a lot bigger because they require a lot more computing power. In terms of water, they do use a lot, but there are ways that you can mitigate it. So using a closed loop system can reduce freshwater use by up to 70%. If they don't use that, it's a problem. If they do use that, less of a problem. Power is the bigger one, but then there's questions of, is that power coming from the grid or are they self-sufficient? Trump loves to tout self-sufficient ones. We'll get back to that. But, I think, I don't know the proportion, but there are certainly plenty that are not self-sufficient. Are they using green energy or fossil fuels? So all these sort of design aspects make a big difference to how intensive they are. And a lot of it comes down to the choices people make.
Yeah, I was going to add in there, depending on whether you're pro or anti data center, and increasingly people are just anti them, the water figure you cite can change depending on your position, in that there's indirect and there's direct usage of water. And that goes to what you were talking about before. Like they often recirculate, not often, some of them recirculate the water because they're using it for cooling. So it doesn't matter. Just use the same water over and over again. And so the indirect use of water is massive, but the direct use of water, not so big if they're recirculating. And so people often cite the indirect use of water stat deliberately to make it seem like it's massive when it's actually not.
Yeah.
The other thing is, the only other thing they use water for is the energy source. It's actually tied to the energy, the water and energy. Depending on what kind of energy source they're using, they might need a lot of water for their energy station, or they might not. I mean, renewables don't tend to use as much water. That's a separate issue, but I just want to cite that. But the other thing I was going to say with energy, and this goes to your views on these kinds of things. My personal view is that there's smart ways to do these things and dumb ways to do these things, and that if you're smart with data centers and you use them, you can use them as a means of scaling up technology that you want to improve and make more efficient. Like, for instance, how many times have you heard about solar power, wind power needing to achieve some kind of economies of scale to become cheap for everyone? This is the perfect opportunity to go, okay, let's pass a law that that every single, if you want a data center, sure, you build solar power, you build wind power, you build whatever kind of power that you are trying to create scale on as a government. And that will make that source of power cheaper for everyone. It's not just they'll take care of it for that particular data center, but for the entire world, that technology will be cheaper. And so you can really make it work for you if you care. And if you're smart about it. But as you say, many people are not smart about it. So, yeah, like Tom Tiffany is coal.
Yeah, exactly. There's been more of a race to the bottom in terms of removing protections and benefits for local communities rather than adding them. Yeah. And that gets to the financial aspects of it as well. So people, including Trump, say it brings a lot of money and jobs to communities. So as a result, a lot of these states have lured, as we said, in the case of Wisconsin, these companies with massive tax breaks, but that reduces the financial benefit. Yeah. Local planning rules are often suspended to accommodate these data centers, so the standards are lower. They create construction jobs, it's true, but they don't usually create a lot of long-term jobs. So it's a sugar hit without a long-term benefit in many cases. Virginia, which is the current data center capital of America, actually did have a model in terms of how to get financial benefits. They got a lot of data centers in their state and they taxed them in Loudoun County in particular. They had a tax on computer equipment inside the data centers, and that was expected to generate $1.3 billion in revenue, which is 40% of the county's total tax revenue. And they, as a result, cut property taxes for residents by about 30% over the past decade. So they chose to actually tax these data centers, and they did make a lot of money from it. So there are ways that can happen if people are motivated. Having said that, Virginia is also now backing away a bit from data centers, saying it's gone too far. And they're also, the equation can change. So Virginia is now bringing in a first-in-the-country tax specifically on data center energy use. And the reason for that is because the economics on it have actually changed. So when there's spare capacity in an electric grid, having a large and consistent customer can actually lower the cost for everybody because the infrastructure costs are what they are. And if you have a consistent user base, then that's spreading out the amount that everybody is paying, including local residents. But once these centers get to a big enough size, a lot of the time utilities have to build more infrastructure to accommodate them. And that suddenly raises the cost for everybody because then your capital costs are going up. Yeah. And that's occurring now in many places with these big AI data centers because they're huge and the local grid cannot accommodate them. Yeah. And so that's why it potentially made sense in a lot of these cases to bring these data centers in the past, but the economics don't make sense anymore. And so it's not just some irrational shift in the mood. You know, the scale of this build out is actually changing the economics of it.
That's really interesting. In terms of the race to the bottom, what I was going to say was that I feel like this, I mean, obviously states by definition need to give permission, and so they should get some benefit out of it with a state tax. But it feels to me like the kind of thing where states are going to compete against each other by lowering taxes and the race to the bottom and just everyone screws everyone else. It feels like this is the area where it should be a federal tax. Like, kind of like in Australia, I know we have a lot of American peppers. In Australia, we have a GST, a sales tax, that the government collects and then distributes the proceeds to the states in various proportions of population. It feels like that's the kind of thing that the federal government should be doing, having a basic data center tax. I don't know based on what, whether it's based on property or whatever, that they then distribute to the states, just to protect the states from screwing each other over. Because we talk about UBIs coming out of universal basic income, coming out of AI. How do you implement a universal basic income? This is a way that you can potentially do that. Like either the government raising a huge amount of tax from these data centers and then distributing it through checks to individuals or to states. And that could be the beginnings. It won't be the whole shebang, but it could be the beginnings of a way of socializing the profits a little bit of AI. And I feel like we're not hearing much about the federal government even considering that. Strikes me as an opportunity.
Yeah. And we've seen this like again and again with states in America. Like it happens with stadiums, it happens with big corporations. Like states basically forfeit all this money to bring these companies to the state. And at a certain point, you kind of have to question, because then another state comes in, like outbids them or underbids them or, undercuts them basically. And, this race to the bottom occurs over and over again where really like these companies are just like making hay and the states themselves are getting precious little revenue out of these deals. And, you can see it happening again. So, I mean, all of this is to say it's definitely possible to do data center development well if you have very strong regulations about the energy usage, the water usage, the design of these systems. You have local community consultation. You tax them in a way that brings benefits to the states and specifically the local communities that house these data centers. But increasingly, these things have been not happening. And that's a lot of the reason why you're getting the backlash.
Makes sense.
We should look at Utah because it's a great case study in why people are so mad about data centers.
Go for it.
Not least because it's the biggest. It's the big one. So there is a plan to build the world's biggest data center in Utah right now in a rural community called Box Elder, which sounds very Utah. It does. The plan is now being scaled down because of the degree of the protest, but let's just take the specs of the original for the points of telling the story. This is from Forbes. It was planned for 40,000 acres, which is almost 3 times the size of Manhattan. Wow. Just the physical size of this data center.
That's just the buildings.
That's just the space it would take up. Well, maybe the land, but the project. Gotcha. The power demands would be twice Utah's current electricity consumption. And it's powered, they say it's self-sufficient, but it's powered entirely by natural gas, which is not renewable. Yeah. So that incidentally drives up prices because...
It's taking it from somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. It would be so huge that it was predicted to raise local nighttime temperatures by up to 28 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 15.5 degrees Celsius, just from the heat coming off this data center operating.
To increase temperatures by 15 degrees Celsius.
At nighttime. In the daytime, it was about 2.5 degrees Celsius, I think, like 5 degrees Fahrenheit, which is still not nothing.
So.
But like at nighttime, wild.
The difference between, say, 31 degrees Celsius and 33.5 degrees Celsius,
yeah.
You'd feel it.
Yeah, you would.
Yes.
I mean, 2 degrees Celsius is the amount that we've been like freaked out about with climate change for many years, like world changing.
And by the way, Utah ain't cold in summer.
No.
Yeah.
Well, to that, an ecology professor at Brigham Young University said it could transform Utah's semi-arid climate to conditions comparable to the Sahara Desert. And a physics professor at Utah State University said the thermal load would be the equivalent of about 23 atom bombs worth of energy dumped into this local environment every single day, which is a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a problem.
In response to this insane scale and size and understandable concerns, the local county commissioners voted unanimously to approve the project. And when locals made their objections clear, one commissioner told them, "For hell's sake, grow up." Do you feel like that's good community consultation?
I don't.
Which is just, I think it just, the reason I wanted to point to it is both because the scale of it is kind of mind-blowing, but also the way in which it was handled. You know, you think the bigger the project, the more the sensitivity.
Of course.
And there's just a sense with these projects, the data center projects, but also AI more broadly. Like, these people have money, they can do what they want, and everyone else just has to take it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the attitude. And people can feel it, and they hate it.
Of course they can. Yeah. Look, I know I take your point, and it's well made. I know I'm missing the point with what I'm about to say, but I can't get past why you'd want to build this massive thing in the middle of the desert. Like why wouldn't you build it in Alaska or in Canada or something? You know, like some place where it's cold. It just seems bizarre. Like, I mean, like I was saying before at Wisconsin, the fact that Wisconsin's a bit colder makes it better to have them there because you don't need to spend so much energy trying to cool down the data center.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you build it in a, like, obviously you want to create global warming with your data center, but yeah, like there are these massive islands in Canada that are just nothing. Yeah, like they're just near the North Pole. Why don't you build some massive data centers there?
Well, because, I mean, logistically, it would be really hard to build things in the North Pole, I'm imagining.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is just like, you know, there's land. It's a corporate-friendly environment. They got unanimous approval from the local council. And,
apparently, yes.
And, you know, there's, like, I haven't looked into all the specific infrastructure requirements of building this thing, but, you know, they like to build close to centers where you can get workers there. Like, the more remote something is, or the more challenging the terrain is, like, you know, when you're dealing with snow and stuff, the harder it is logistically, and that makes it more expensive. Yeah. But I mean, Utah is in the middle of a massive drought, so you can see why people are sensitive.
There's got to be a happy medium, surely.
Yeah, you would think so. But yeah, like, I just think, like I say, this all just sort of seems to come from this attitude of entitlement of, like, we're going to get what we want, and like, if you don't like it, grow up. The reality is, like, that doesn't cut it, because people are figuring out that this is a point where they can create resistance to this dynamic and this technology that they're worried about and the environmental concerns they're worried about. And people are increasingly pushing back, not just in terms of polling, but in reality. So, I mean, there's lots of metrics of this, but is one example. In the first quarter of this year, at least 75 projects nationwide totaling roughly $130 billion have been impacted by people pushing back at the local level.
And of course, the bigger it is, the more you're going to lose if they push back.
Yeah.
So maybe you shouldn't be telling people to grow up.
Yes. Yeah, and the pushback is just going to accelerate more and more, because the more people around the country see some communities pushing back successfully, the more they're going to be like, oh, so we could do that too. And not just in terms of drawing inspiration from them, but learning tactically from them in terms of how they did it. So definitely expect this to be a story that just keeps growing and growing as well. We talked about why people hate data centers, but maybe let's talk a little bit more about why people hate AI as well, which we did also touch on a bit. But I think that it's worth just noting the constant predictions of job losses.
Yes.
And the polling that shows people believe it when they hear it. Like, a lot of this is coming from the AI companies themselves that are touting productivity gains, and people hear that and they're like, okay, so I lose my job. That's what you're talking about. We also keep getting told by AI workers themselves that we should be scared. So just recently, more than 1,300 employees of frontier AI companies signed an open letter calling on the US government to have more oversight over what they're doing. They're like, stop us, please. And one safety employee at Anthropic who signed the letter also posted online going further, saying he supports the letter, but adding, not only is AI not guaranteed to make a dramatically better future, the odds of failure are terrifyingly high. I think there's something like a 40% chance we get an outcome around as bad as human extinction or worse, and another 30% chance we get a future or worse. And another 30% chance we get a future that, while containing some good things, falls radically short of what a wiser civilization could have obtained. Say, less than 5% of the value of a truly great future. This is coming from someone who works in safety at Anthropic. And, like, I get that people who work at AI companies can overhype AI's awesome powers at times, and sometimes there's self-interest, especially from the CEOs.
That's a sales tactic.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, whether this particular employee has an incentive to up the share price or, you know, the purported share price or not is an open question. But even then, like, I think people kind of, you know, like, people who work at AI probably believe in the power of AI more than the average person. So a bit of a grain of salt. But having said that, if you're just an ordinary person and you're hearing the people making this stuff telling you this is what's going to happen, you can understand why people are concerned.
Of course.
And at the same time, we see the bosses of all these AI companies getting right now mind-blowingly wealthy off the back of it. Just like insane wealth. And it's just like all of the ingredients for like massive populist backlash.
Look, I know this is miles off. Then this goes to what I was talking to Justin Wolfers about a few PEPs ago. And this is something I was thinking about at the time. I didn't want to raise it because we had other things to talk about. But when we talk about jobs and AI, I always think to myself, there's a certain, I mean, look, there's going to be, obviously, there'll be some jobs lost, obviously. But there at least, I think, is going to be for a certain period of time, there'll be a minimum level of jobs in services. This is what I was talking to Justin about how people, I think, at least at first, are going to prefer masseurs than robots. They're people. And they're going to prefer therapists, if they're good therapists, not just plain by numbers therapists, that are people. And there are things when there's a personal touch for people who've grown up on the personal touch. But when I talked about the next generation who grew up with AI, they ain't going to want that. All they know is AI. They're raised on AI. And so I think for a period of time, like down to the people who are probably about 5 or 10 years old now, they've got a certain number of them, maybe not enough, but a lot of them are going to have jobs in the services industry, I think, in some way or another. But because they'll be servicing people who are older than them. People who don't want to be surrounded by AI all the time. But the next generation after them, who are they going to be servicing? Because they're not going to want other people. They're going to want just AI. And so that's the area where I go, well, geez, what happens to the jobs then? What are they doing then? Because I'm not sure they're going to want services from people. And I don't know what the world does then. But that's so far off. That's still 40 years away or whatever, or 50 years away. But that strikes me as when society doesn't have any answers at all. Like there's a whole bunch of classic economics type answers for the next 20 years, but those answers, they stop becoming answers pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to feel that history at least shows when there are major technological changes or other types of major changes in the economy or workforce or country, that you have a period of massive disruption, and some people are particularly hard hit from that, and some people lose their jobs and never get another job, and that creates all these bad flow-on effects. But ultimately, different kinds of jobs emerge. Like, I kind of feel like less sold on the idea that we're going to have universal basic income and lots of leisure time, and more sold on the idea that just jobs that we just can't imagine yet,
of course, will
emerge because people find a way to be busy.
Not to mention, all because a robot can do your job doesn't mean the robot's cheaper at doing the job than you.
Yeah.
Like why would you build a very specialist robot that does a very special task that only X hundred people do, rather than just pay the X hundred people? Yeah, that would be cheaper, won't it?
Yeah.
So there'll be a bit of that as well, I imagine.
Yeah, and you just think about the fact that, like we have all these machines in our home that do, like washing machines and dishwashers and stuff. Like it used to be that wives did all that work by hand, and that is not done by hand anymore, and that's a big change. And the workforce has absorbed all these women that didn't used to be in the workforce, and that's a change. But ultimately, over time, women don't just get to sit around kicking their heels up. They started doing other kinds of jobs. Yeah. And I think that tends to be what happens. But the problem is that in the transition, lots of people do get left behind. And the pain is real. It's not just it's not the case that someone, loses their factory job and gets a tech job or whatever. These things don't happen that way because they're different skills.
Yeah.
And history also shows that often those transitions are managed very poorly, and a lot of people suffer in the meantime. And so ideally, you would have a lot of thoughtful people at a policy level planning now for how to manage.
How to tell them to grow up.
The upheaval, yeah. And instead, I do feel like we're not getting that.
No, I feel
And I just think most people hear the potential benefits of AI that we're promised, which is like mostly around be more productive at work, and the trade-offs being like mass surveillance and mass hacking and bioweapons that kill us all, and are like, is that worth it? And that's obviously, again, like a skewed like picture of reality of what actually is like most likely to happen. But like you can't blame people for just going off the messaging that they're receiving.
Of course. And all we're hearing is about what losses there'll be, and we don't know what gains there'll be. I'm sure there'll be gains. There'll be huge gains.
Yeah.
We just don't know what they are.
Yeah.
And it's the classic human psychology of loss aversion. The potential loss is clear as hell right in front of your face. The potential gain, maybe way more, but you have no idea what that is.
But also when we hear the gains, they're not inherently connected to the losses. Like one of the gains I feel like I hear a lot is like AI could cure cancer. And it's like, sure, but like we have humans working on trying to cure cancer, and they're not saying, oh, maybe we could cure cancer for you, and all you have to risk is like your job and your privacy, and we might also make a bioweapon that kills you.
That's such a good call.
They just want grant money.
Yeah, that's true.
So I can see why people aren't like, okay, fair enough, fair trade.
That's fair.
Yeah. I think like the other thing is these sort of like tech bosses, in addition to just generally being people who like tend to be not very likable and kind of pretty obnoxious a lot of the time in their public facing communications, the big argument for them is that they should be allowed to do whatever they want because otherwise China wins. Like that's the thing I feel like is the flip side. That's the war. The gain is, we'll do these great things for you if you let us take these big risks and make all this money. And then the warning is if you don't let us take all these risks and make all this money, then China will win. And I don't know if do you find this argument convincing in ways? Do you want to speak to it at all?
All I would say is that I don't think it's wrong to say that there is a certain degree of competition amongst the world, and that if an American billionaire or trillionaire doesn't get there, that a Chinese trillionaire probably will get there. That doesn't offend me. Like I'm a free trader. that doesn't offend me at all. But I think the argument is, do you want an authoritarian government to have these potential weapons at their disposal, and that is, that is potentially an issue. So, but having said that, like you say, the trillionaires that we know, they didn't get there because of their people skills, and I don't necessarily trust that they'd be that much better. To be honest, it's that's my feeling. Is like the idea that we have to choose between an authoritarian government controlling all of AI or half a dozen unaccountable, very rich men with no regulation is a false choice. And that the idea that if the US government has any say in regulation of these things at all, that it will inherently cede the win to China is just not supported by evidence. Because, for starters, if it's genuinely there's a national security aspect and the financial aspect. If it's genuinely a national security issue, that's an argument for more government oversight, not less. The government oversees weapons manufacturing and other kinds of dangerous research precisely because it's dangerous and they want to control it in a way that is to the advantage of America as a country. We've been talking about this forever on PEP, that it just... The essential problem with AI is that we don't know how to regulate it, like as a world, and we don't know how to institute regulations that stick. And the more democratic it is, and the more justified those regulations seem, the more ignorant the people who are going to make those decisions are going to be. Like if they're genuinely democratically responsive and responsive to the people, they're not going to have the slightest clue what they're talking about. But the more they do know what they're talking about, the less we're going to trust them. So this is a model we haven't cracked yet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Also, don't tell me China's government is not getting involved in what they're developing over there. So, even if government intervention inherently strangles innovation to a degree, America would still have the edge, I would argue, over China in that respect. But also if we're talking about economically, exactly as you say, like if the benefits are just going to a small group of people and it's like, do we want the Chinese guy to be a trillionaire or the American guy to be a trillionaire? Who cares if it's just one person? Like if it's not flowing down to everyday people either way, then it really doesn't matter. Like, why be nationalistic about it? You're getting screwed either way. So what's the difference?
I was going to say on the China thing, the one thing which we haven't mentioned, which I always just go, oh, I don't know, is that what the tech guys always say, is they go, you know, all this opposition to the data centers, that's astroturfed from China. That is Chinese bots trying to create dissension in America through social media in order to get an advantage over Americans. And they want our data centers to be crippled. So they'll move ahead of us. And you go, well, that sounds very convenient coming from you guys. But could it be true? I don't know. It's just something we just don't know. You know, it's like, I mean, I know I don't trust the people who are saying that, but it doesn't mean that they might not also be right. At least to the degree some of it might be. I don't know.
It could well be true. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But I think it doesn't mitigate any of the issues that we've already discussed. It doesn't change the environmental and economic impacts, and it doesn't change the fact that the AI companies are not making their best efforts, shall we say, to bring the community along with them. Yeah. We should talk a little bit about how federal politicians are talking about this issue. Okay. First of all, Trump. He told Punchbowl News recently that he doesn't think data centers are unsightly, which is one of the knocks on them. Okay. He thinks they look great.
But windmills
unlike windmills, exactly. Windmills, gross. Data centers, beautiful.
If only they were boxier. Those windmills.
If you could put them in a box, they'd be great. He also says Texas is making a mistake from backing away from data centers, especially because he's already solved the energy consumption problem.
We are leading, because of me, we're leading AI. Remember this, I came up with an idea that was a great idea. Nobody thought it was serious. They didn't even believe it. They didn't even put in plans with it. I said, when you build your data center, I'm going to let you build your own electric source as your electric generating source. They said, well, that's too good to be true. They didn't believe me. It took them a month to realize I was serious. And I'm going to get you fast approvals. Lee Zeldin is great.
He invented that, did he?
For people listening, that's not Franken-grabbed. That is actually just how he said it. Do you find that plausible, the idea that Donald Trump came up with the idea of data centers generating their own power?
I'm pretty sure he didn't. I'm pretty sure that happened before Donald Trump was the president this time around,
really?
At the very least. Yeah.
Oh, weird. Yeah. And again, if only he found wind farms more aesthetically pleasing, that might be a way for these data centers to generate their own power. But alas, no. Yeah. What I think he's talking about, I'm not totally sure, but I think, is a voluntary pledge that he's encouraged tech companies and electricity companies, and governors to sign. The idea is to sign this pledge to shield consumers from higher utility bills as a result of data centers. So they're basically like, I will make sure if I build a data center or have a data center built in my state that there won't be flow-on electricity costs to consumers. Voluntary pledge. In California, where there's actual legislation on the table to do this, the industry opposes it. The industry that's signing this pledge. So that gives you an indication of what a voluntary pledge is worth in this space. On the flip side, Bernie Sanders for the Democrats is kind of one of the people leading the charge to try and bring some kind of regulation, federal government oversight over all this. So he introduced a bill that would give Americans a 50% ownership stake in the largest AI companies. And the idea behind that's twofold. It's partly about money. So it would be worth an estimated $7 trillion, which would mean everyday Americans get a share of the wealth being generated by AI. And, you can understand the logic because it's built off the back of knowledge generated by everyday people. Yep. But it would also give people a seat at the table. So the bill would create an independent commission staffed by a nonpartisan or bipartisan group of people nominated by Congress. And they would have voting shares on these AI companies. They'd be on the board. So they would effectively be the representative of the people.
The same people on different boards or different people on different boards?
Good question.
Because, there's a bit of a conflict of interest there, isn't it? Because they're competitors.
Well, they're basically there to represent the interests of everyday Americans in terms of policies.
No, I understand. But if they have any kind of influence on what the board does, these people, those companies are competitors with each other. So where are these people coming from? Are they, if they're the same people, that's weird. And if they're not the same people, then how's that working? Like I want to see more detail on that, I reckon.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, yeah, the thing that would be hard about it is how do they get access to the information they need without having information that's commercial and confidence across the company? Because
totally,
I think in one sense, there being the same group of people representing everyday people is a positive, because one of the things that AI companies themselves say is you get this dynamic where they kind of seem to be like, oh, you guys should probably stop us from what we're doing here, but also we don't want to give up our competitive advantage to that company, so we're going to keep going until you stop us, even though we think you should stop us. Like that's kind of been a lot of the messaging that we're getting. And so in some ways, and I mean this is particularly, some of these companies are big enough now that it's to their advantage to have some degree of standardization of, because it makes it more predictable for them and also potentially makes it easier for them to stop startup competitors chipping into their share. But, there's a kind of argument that having a kind of a level playing field of rules or principles that everyone has to play by is good for safety and is a framework within which AI companies can operate. Of course. But yeah, I can imagine there are issues, as you say.
Yeah, of course. The other thing is you got the same problem that we discussed before, which is that if I'm a potential trillionaire and Bernie Sanders wants half of my company, I'm moving to China or Japan or Taiwan or how many other countries would allow you to set up shop there and not take half your company? This is the problem.
Yeah.
Well,
that is the other problem with it. The chances of it passing are zero. But it's at least starting a conversation.
It is. And we're engaging in it.
But good. I mean, what kind of legislation could realistically pass? I mean, who knows? This is part of the problem where it's like, all well and good to be like, someone should regulate this, but you need a functional Congress to have any shot of that, which is not what we have at the moment.
Yes, no, it's not. We haven't had it for some time.
Yeah. So, look, it's going to be interesting to see where all of this goes. It is something that I think was not really on the radar as a big political issue until quite recently, but it is snowballing quite quickly and it's becoming one of the dominant issues of the midterms, and I think it's pretty clearly going to extend beyond that because the numbers are shifting, the situation on the ground is shifting all the time. The fact that it sort of scrambles partisan lines is very interesting and something that, will create dynamics we don't see so much when it comes to big issues in politics these days.
Absolutely.
So, but I do think that there is generally not a lot of trust in the community that politicians have a handle on this and are acting in the interests of everyday people. And I think that is generating a lot of anger and activism throughout America. And so it's kind of interesting to see what people do with this sort of leverage now they've realized that they have it.
Sure is. Thank you very much for that, Melina.
No worries.
While we're talking about midterms, because that's obviously looming large, let's go through a couple of states. I want to start with Michigan. The 50+1 average in Michigan has El Sayed up by 2. The last two neutral polls had El Sayed up by 7 and up by 1. So it's flipping around a bit. The reason I said neutral is because, like I said on Planet America, both these guys like to put out dodgy polls, dodgy partisan polls to try and stack the narrative. El Sayed put out 8 of the last 19 polls in the Democratic primary, which was unusual. That didn't used to happen. It used to be just a Republican thing, but he's picked up that tactic. The one before the third last neutral poll had Rogers up by 4. Now the demographics, that was a Fox poll. The demographics from that Fox poll were interesting. White men, no college degree, Rogers up 63 to 37. White men, college degree, Rogers up 55 to 43. White women, no college degree, Rogers up 60 to 38. So Rogers is up amongst all men and women with no college degree. White women, college degree, so they're all white, not just men and women. White women, college degree, El Sayed up 60 to 37. So El Sayed is basically winning amongst non-whites and amongst white women with a college degree, and Rogers is owning the rest. That's in the Fox poll where Rogers was ahead. So that in the other polls that might not be the case. But the swings were quite significant there. I thought were worth noting. More interesting crosstabs with Fox. 27% of non-DSA Democrats support Mike Rogers over El Sayed, which is basically the opposite of what we're about to see with Tallarico when we get to him. Rogers was winning 22% of black voters, which is a lot for a Republican. And Rogers was up 5 over El Sayed amongst independents. So that's not great. Now, that is in the Fox poll, which was the most pro-Rogers poll. But still, El Sayed wouldn't be toasting those numbers, I don't think. Those numbers suggested that he has a problem. Some of the other polls, not so much. Long way to go as well. And I think El Sayed's a pretty strong campaigner. So campaign against El Sayed's background is essentially where it's at. That's what Rogers is doing. The Republicans have been talking a lot about his Muslim background in particular, how he had got a Sharia-compliant mortgage. I don't even know what that means. How his mother once worked for an organisation called the Islamic American Relief Agency from 1999 until 2004. At the time, they were designated by the Treasury Department as being linked to terrorism. Not that they were terrorists themselves, but linked to terrorism. They describe themselves as a humanitarian organisation focusing on healthcare, orphans and disadvantaged people in areas of conflict, but they're accused basically of funding terrorism, funneling money to Osama bin Laden, to Taliban and to Hamas at that point in time. That's an interesting period of time too, 1999 to 2004. There was a fair bit of evidence for at least some of that funding from the early 2000s. In 2010, 2 of IARA's board of directors pled guilty to conspiring to move more than $1 million to Iraq. Also, his father-in-law is amongst the top leaders of the Islamic Society of North America, which is an Islamic organisation identified by the federal government as a public-facing group for the Muslim Brotherhood. His father-in-law has been on the 20-member founding committee since at least 2007. 2007 is an interesting year. That's the year that a legal matter began that ended with the group's founders being convicted of funneling $12 million to Hamas. Note, none of that's El Sayed. They're his relatives.
Yeah.
Right, so we should make a point of that. This is also where Hassan Piker comes in, though. They're trying to just muddy El Sayed as much as possible with, he's got this link to this person who has a link to that. There was a link to that. He likes this preacher who's got a link to this, that kind of stuff. And then they go, and look what Hassan Piker's said. Is he going to disavow Hassan Piker? No, he's not. Oh, no. So to give you an example, every time Hassan Piker says something a bit wild, which is very frequently, it allows Rogers to scratch that itch. For instance, Hassan Piker this week said this.
If Jews in America keep putting this idea out there that they are singularly invested in Israel, eventually someone's going to come around and take action, not against the state of Israel, mind you, but against American Jews. Okay? We're teaching people the wrong lesson. I don't know how people don't recognize how dangerous this predicament is, how dangerous this is for Jews. You're running around basically tying your entire identity to a country that inevitably will be seen as basically Jewish ISIS. And you're saying, as Jews, this is all we care about.
Now, it's pretty obvious what Piker's saying there. He's not calling for violence or calling for action himself. What he's doing is he's saying it's a terrible political strategy for Jewish people in America to embrace Israel too tightly when Israel is on the nose and is going to be more on the nose in the years to come. He wasn't demanding someone get them. He wasn't threatening them. He was saying, think about where you're going on this train. You're going to end up in a place you don't want to be because Israel is not a good place to be wrapping yourself in at this point in time. That's what he is saying. He's giving advice. That's what he's doing. Now, I'm sure conservative Zionists don't want Hassan Piker's advice. I'm sure they'd prefer him to just stop talking about them. But that wasn't a threat, especially when you note there was a mysterious cut in the middle of it. I didn't put that cut there. They put that cut there. Still, that's an example of the kind of thing that's ambiguous enough for Mike Rogers to jump on And he's going to probably do this 20 more times before the election. He tweets out, more calls for violence coming out of the El Sayed campaign. Here's his running mate, Hassan Piker, saying that if American Jews support Israel, they'll be violently targeted because of it. This is all in reaction to Michigan Democrat congressional candidate Jeremy Moss, who happens to be Jewish, saying he's unsure if he'll be able to support Abdul for these very reasons. Absolutely disgusting. If Abdul El Sayed had any courage at all, he would call us out and disavow Hassan Piker once and for all. We're waiting, Abdul. Now, I'm not expressing an opinion about what Hassan Piker is saying there. I can see why people would agree with it. I can see why people would disagree with it. I'm just saying what the obvious tactic here is from Mike Rogers. This is his campaign. There's going to be a lot of that. Interestingly, Mike Rogers last week apparently had a meeting with the AIPAC board chair, Michael Tuchin, saying that while he welcomed their support, he wondered if maybe they could not give it so publicly. He wondered if they could just donate to another super PAC rather than making the ads themselves with their super PAC. He wondered whether maybe AIPAC weren't the best messengers for their message. Don't get me wrong, he's still attending AIPAC events. He's not distancing himself from AIPAC. But he was just suggesting that maybe there might be a way they could be more effective if they weren't quite so AIPAC-y. So,
yeah, he wants them to spend money. Just be less transparent about it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that seems that Mike Rogers is acknowledging implicitly that the benefits of AIPAC support are mixed. Remember, El Sayed is explicitly campaigning to get special interest money out of politics. During the primary, he said at the time about AIPAC, if you're listening, come back and burn your money again. I can't help noticing that an August 13 Fox News survey found 55% of Michigan voters oppose further US aid. Suggests to me, this line of attack from Rogers, it's risky. Probably not going to work. But it seems to be the one he's chosen. Do you have any thoughts so far?
I think those kinds of arguments, if they engage anyone, engage the base more. Like I think about on the flip side, like how often do you hear people talk about Donald Trump not disavowing David Duke or having dinner with a Nazi when Nick Fuentes showed up uninvited for dinner or invited by Kanye West. And that's kind of similar in the sense of like, guilt by association. It wasn't that he was saying he loved those people. It was like, well, this person loves you. Are you going to disavow them? And he didn't. And like some people probably cared because we still hear about it. We hear about it all the time. But it's more, I think, something that riles up the base, which is not nothing.
No, it's not.
It might engage Republican voters. I don't think it's persuading independents.
But I'll tell you when you didn't hear about it. You didn't hear about it 2 weeks before an election. That's the difference. Like
trying to remember what I heard about in 2016. That's a long time ago now.
The Fuentes dinner was after the election.
No, I know, but the David Duke thing was 2016.
Yeah. Like it's like this is going to be Mike Rogers' closing argument. Like we are getting towards the end now. And this is all he's talking about. I should say there are other issues with El Sayed. He was the executive director and health officer of the Detroit Health Department. He was in charge of animal control. There's some suggestion that more dogs and cats were killed than needed to be. I don't know if that's obviously a feint towards the left. Well, lots of people like animals. But I don't know if that's going anywhere, but they're trying that as well. Pretty vague accusation at this point in time. I don't think any of these are direct hits. But it just suggests that all they've got really is he's too left. That's pretty generic kind of attack. Whereas El Sayed's got much better weapons against Mike Rogers to play with. Having said that, El Sayed's definitely polling worse than the other swing state Democrats are. Like I told you, he's like +1, +2. Like Josh Turek in Iowa, Tallarico in Texas. They're polling better than El Sayed. And they're in red states, deep red states. So he's not like he's doing wonderfully, but you just project forward and you go, he's got more tools at his disposal than Mike Rogers does. Like, for instance, the Canadian tariffs.
What's going to be interesting to see with all of these cases is, I think you have a dynamic where you have in states like Texas a candidate that independents and maybe even some Republicans are like, yeah, that guy's pretty likable. He's pretty moderate. Like, we kind of like him. But will they actually vote for him when push comes to shove, when structurally those, and habitually those voters, that area, that state is so Republican. And you kind of have the reverse dynamic in a place like Michigan, where you have a lot of people who are like, we don't really like this guy, or we're not sure about this guy if he's really right for us. But also, it's been a long time since Michigan elected a Democratic senator. Yeah. And so the kind of structural and habitual forces favor him. And not to mention the fact that it is a year more generally where you would expect Democrats to do better because Trump is so unpopular. So, the kind of, in some ways, I'm not surprised that Tallarico is polling better than El Sayed in terms of, like, one is more polarizing than the other. But I also wouldn't be surprised if El Sayed wins and Tallarico doesn't.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. On Canada's tariffs, I just want to talk about them for a second because I think they're critical in Michigan in particular, but a lot of other states. The tariffs are going to hit about 5% of Canada's exports to the US. It's not really as big a deal as you'd think from all the media coverage. Canada says it's going to match those tariffs dollar for dollar. We're talking about $20 billion. I mean, Canada's trade with America is like $880 billion in 2025. So this is a very small part of that. But having said that, it's highly integrated so that many of Americans' exports to other countries go through Canada at one point in time and then come back. So it might affect a lot of exports, not just Canada. Both sides have a lot of demands of each other. Canada wants exemptions from tariffs for its energy industry. Trump imposed a huge number of demands at the last second. He was just being a bit of a bully. There does seem to be one sticking point in particular, though, which is Bill 96 is an act that identifies French as the official language of Quebec. Bill 109 asserts the cultural sovereignty of Quebec and grants it the ability to set French language quotas for French language content. And America doesn't want to have to produce packaging controls and manuals in French. They don't like that. Canada says this is a matter of sovereignty. We're not giving this up. And that it seems to be the major sticking point right now.
Well, that and that America wanted to be able to control Canadian trade policy.
Yeah, well, there is that.
That's a big one.
There is that. The key is while this is not necessarily involving large numbers of exports, this is going to cover some news because this will get people's attention because Canada's not going anywhere. They're not going to back down before the election. They back Carney. He's got 60% approval. Trump does not. And, 2/3 favour the Canadian government taking a hard line in trade talk. Fewer than a quarter regard the United States as trustworthy. I couldn't believe this one. 55% of Canadians believe the US poses the most risk to Canada's security of any country. Their security. 15% said China and 14% said Russia. 55% said America. Because it's the biggest
to be fair, America is the only one that's explicitly threatened to take them over in recent years.
That is true. That is true. Now, Trump's threatened to escalate tariffs to the car industry at the beginning of 2027. So that maybe Canada might back down then, but that's after the election. At least going to take it to the election. Why they're going to take it to the election is because they know it's really going to hurt America or Trump in the election. More than 30% of Ohio's exports go to Canada. 30% of Iowa's exports go to Canada. 40% of Michigan's exports go to Canada. 40% of Maine's exports go to Canada. So this is such a gift for the Democrats. Even if it doesn't increase many prices on those exports, everyone thinks prices are high and they're all going to be blaming these tariffs, even if it's not because of the tariffs. But they're just going to have on one hand, I think prices are high. On the other hand, I'm thinking, these bloody tariffs. And so he's just making a rod for his own back.
Yeah, well, and also it's not coincidental that they're Canada is strategically, in terms of what they've announced post the deal falling apart, going to target these swing states and Trump states with their particular industries because strategically, they don't want to get all of America offside. Yeah. They're really explicitly trying to keep most Americans on Canada's side and make it really feel to people that it's like, we've been forced into this, but you're only going to hurt if you support Trump. if you don't support Trump and his people, we're all friends. And so it's trying to explicitly put the thumb on the scale against Trump and Republicans.
Look, I think you're right, but honestly, I think the thing I said before, when no one knows what products are going to have tariffs on them and what they aren't, they're just going to know they think prices are high, and they're going to know that there's these tariffs with Canada, because no one's going to stop talking about this trade war for the next 2 months. And so I think it's one of those things where it's going to hit with a much bigger imprint than the actual tariffs would if you knew what the tariffs were. So I think there's a bit of that as well. Canada's economy is struggling a bit, but not as much as America's. We're not going to get to debt. I'm going to push that back to next week when we talk about it. But suffice to say, Canada has low debt, America has high debt, and that's going to become more of an issue as time goes on with every country dealing with America. The American government's paying 5.3% interest rates over the next 30 years. Canada's paying 4.2% interest rates. That's an advantage to Canada. They can afford to have harsher times for longer because they don't have high debt. And this is going to be a problem for America against every country from now on. So this is something we should get used to. The arrogance of the Trump administration is not helping either. First of all, J.D. Vance, have a look at this.
We have to remember, Canada is a state. Sorry, Freudian slip. That was actually an accident. Canada is a country that has underinvested in its military that quite literally would get invaded by a foreign country were it not for the umbrella of protection provided by the United States of America.
What a smug prick. And how is that not a threat? There's a threat. What is this guy doing? And then there's Trump, of course. Canada has been ripping off the United States of America for years. Their ridiculously high tariffs on our farmers and farm products has made life impossible for these great American patriots, as long created a $60 billion deficit between our two countries. Not sustainable, and not anymore. On January 1st, 2027, tariffs on all cars, trucks, both large and small, as I was referring to before, automotive parts and steel will be increased to 50%. Build in the US, and there are zero tariffs. Canada will be treated like a state no longer. On trade in other ways also, they are amongst the worst nations in the world to deal with. They feel entitled, and yet we don't need Canada. They need us. They do 95% of their business with the US with us. The exact opposite. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. If he actually did that, he would destroy the American car industry overnight. It's just like the car parts just go back and forth over the border over and over and over again. He's not going to do it. But anyway, when he does that, when he talks like that, it just makes the Canadians more determined to get to the election at the very least. Yeah. So that is huge for Michigan and for Ohio and for Iowa and for Maine. Do you have anything else to say about Michigan before I go to Maine? No? Okay, so let's go to Maine, which I haven't mentioned since the holidays. They also have heaps of trade with Canada. Troy Jackson is ahead by 2.7% in the 50+1 average. He's the replacement of Graham Plattner, who, yes, the Peppers have noticed that I haven't said anything about Graham Plattner since we came back, and I don't intend to say anything about him again. And as far as Troy Jackson goes, 2.7% sounds like a relatively comfortable margin. Not a huge margin, but a sizable margin. The last two elections, the polls had Collins up by... had Collins's opponents up by 6 or 7 on election day and losing comfortably in both cases. Don't necessarily trust the polls in Maine. Troy Jackson's pre-establishment for Maine. He's no insurgent, but also populist. He's a populist establishment type guy. He served in the Maine House of Representatives for 6 years and in the state Senate for 14 years. He was the Senate president for 6 of those years, so insider. He's from a family of loggers, although much like with Plattner, Republicans are accusing him of over-egging his logging heritage, but there's some logging there. Not a big deal. I don't think anyone cares. Jackson's been with his second cousin for 40 years. They have 2 kids. That's legal in Maine, but there's a comment or two about it from out of state in particular. He apparently punched some guy out over her 40 years ago. Jackson said, nearly 40 years ago when I was 19 years old, I got into a fight with another man. I took responsibility for it then. I take responsibility for it now. But let me be clear, I've never been violent with my partner, Lana, or any other woman. There are some who disagree with that. There's one guy in particular who's been doing the rounds on Maine TV who said as part of the same incident, he saw Jackson deliver an open-handed slap/push to his partner. It's a bit slashy, what it is. I'm not sure this is going to be a massive issue, but I just want to list everything that's going around. The big issue in Maine is ICE. That's the big issue for a number of reasons. It's because there have been a number of incidents there. Also because Susan Collins directly voted to fund them. She voted yes to providing ICE with $70 billion of extra funding to last them the next few years in return for zero reforms. Maine has had quite a few controversies, like I said. Most notably, during our holiday, an ICE agent gunned down a 25-year-old immigrant named Johan Duran Guerrero outside his house in Maine, leaving his 3-year-old daughter behind crying. He was a food delivery driver and he had work authorization for America, and they weren't there to get him. They had a different target. He came out to go to work and they escalated and ended up shooting him when he apparently was trying to get away from them. That's what they said, at least. The ICE agent who shot him, David Brulette, has a history of violent outbursts, including throwing boiling hot water on his ex-wife while she was holding their young daughter. That ex-wife also has accused him of pointing a gun at her and threatening her, and also said he was diagnosed with several mental health disorders as a young adult, which doesn't necessarily mean anything in itself. We shouldn't try to villainize people with mental health issues. They're not all violent, but this is part of the picture. His other ex-wife also accused him of physical and mental abuse and said he'd been medically discharged from the military in 2015 because of post-traumatic stress, which also we shouldn't criminalise, but once again, there's a picture being drawn here. He apparently had been hired by ICE in November when they're in the middle of a hiring frenzy, and when every man and his dog said, there are going to be vetting issues here. He's the first of those people to shoot someone dead. Susan Collins' response to all that was to call for more body cameras for ICE, which is interesting because they were supposed to have body cameras 6 months ago and the shooter didn't have a body camera on. That wouldn't have stopped the shooting anyway, so pretty useless. Trump's obviously also an issue. It's interesting that J.D. Vance has headed to Maine twice now to campaign for Susan Collins. And both times she's been too gosh darn busy to be there with him. So draw your own conclusions. Do you have any thoughts about Maine?
No, I'm just shocked after that rock star charisma we saw from Vance just earlier that Susan Collins doesn't want to campaign with him.
Bit of an issue in this region is money. And in fact, a number of regions. The DNC finished June with $16.3 million cash on hand, $18 million in debt. The RNC, the Republican National Committee, finished with $128 million in cash and no debt. Quite a difference. The Democratic Party committees and their allied congressional super PACs finished with $334 million June. The Republican Party committee finished June with $657 million in cash for their allied super PACs. Also, quite a difference. And this is all critical because for the first time in a long time, the Supreme Court has ruled that party committees can spend a lot more of their money on candidates. So now the RNC and the Republican Party committees can use that money on any candidate they like, up to a limit, but quite a high limit. This is a particular issue in Maine, as I'm about to say, and in particular in North Carolina, because Michael Whatley, who's the Republican candidate in North Carolina, is a terrible fundraiser, and Roy Cooper is a very good fundraiser. And Roy Cooper doesn't even need advertising because everyone in North Carolina knows who he is. He's a two-time governor. His PPP polling found 92% of voters know Roy Cooper, 69% know Whatley, and he's got a lot less money. And Cooper's also 8 points ahead. That gap may close if the RNC familiarises voters with Whatley, and that's what they plan to do, drop a big money bomb. Throw in Trump, who has his own super PAC with $400 million available, that's quite an advantage. Especially when Trump, even though it's against the law for Trump to coordinate with his super PAC, he just doesn't care at all.
Do you, MAGA Inc., the super PAC that your allies control, has a lot of money and a lot of people?
Not my allies. I control it.
Okay. You and your allies.
$800 million.
Are you going to spend it?
It's funny. Nobody ever, of course, I'm going to do.
You're going to spend it in the midterms.
I could spend it on pretty much anything I want.
No, you can't. But sadly, he can, because who's gonna take him to court? It's not his Department of Justice, that's for sure. Anyway.
I mean, don't put it past him to not spend it in the midterms and save it for whatever he wants.
Well, we're getting to that. Democratic individual candidates are outraising Republicans big time, but the RNC will make up the difference. Then there's Elon Musk, who reportedly is going to spend $200 million going into the midterms with America PAC, door knocking, digital advertising, etc. He has nominated 2 states so far that are definitely going to receive his largesse. One of them is Texas, one of them is Maine. This is what Troy Jackson has to say about Maine.
Hey everyone, it's Troy Jackson. Look, apparently Elon Musk has gotten off Twitter long enough to realize that he's got a real problem here in Maine. And the problem is me and you working to try and get a government that we should have, that we deserve. So now he's going to spend $100 million across a number of states, but including Maine, to make sure that Susan gets back in, being the rubber stamp that he's had for quite a while now to get all his billions. And here's why he's spending $100 million across these states, because he wants to have people that are totally beholden to him and Donald Trump, making sure that we're getting tax cuts for billionaires on the back of our healthcare system, on the back of our hospitals. That's what Elon Musk wants. He doesn't care about us, really doesn't care about Susan. He cares about him. So I would say, and to you, Elon, Maine and really the whole United States doesn't want your dirty money in our politics. You don't get to buy the government that you want. This is about all of us coming together and fighting for the government that we deserve, and you're not in it.
So that's Maine. If you have anything else to say about, do you have anything to say about Maine before we go to Texas?
No.
Now, Texas, Tallarico, as I said, is ahead by about 2 in the 50+1 average. This is going to be very tight. I mentioned on Planet America that in the Fox poll, Tallarico's 3 points ahead, even though the Democrats are 9 points negative in approval, compared to Republicans being 2 points negative in approval. So he's running about 10 points ahead of Democrats in Texas. Fox has Tallarico winning 23% of non-MAGA Republicans. Like I said, the inverse of Rogers in Michigan. According to Recon MR, independent voters now favour Tallarico by 23 points, 53 to 30. Making prices more affordable, Tallarico's winning 51 to 38. Securing America's border with Mexico, Paxton is only ahead by 4, 48 to 44. On the war in Iran, Tallarico is ahead 50 to 39. On keeping Texans safe, Tallarico is ahead 50 to 43. On managing the water supply in Texas, Tallarico is ahead 49 to 39. Now, Tallarico is trying to run a post-partisan campaign. He's just hired Jacob Smith as his deputy policy director. Jacob Smith was John Cornyn's policy advisor beforehand. Smith said, "I've worked for Republicans like Senator Cornyn my entire career. This year I'm proud to be joining James Tallarico's campaign. Instead of playing partisan politics, Tallarico speaks to the needs of everyday people who day in and day out work too hard for too little. Ken Paxton is the most corrupt, self-dealing politician in Texas who would sell their futures to the highest contributor just to hold on to power. I'm encouraging all my fellow Republicans who know Ken Paxton is unfit to serve in the Senate to finally hold him accountable at the ballot box." Now, Tallarico's not trying to win Republicans with that. He's trying to win independents. And so far, he seems to be achieving it. And that's basically directly where his campaign is being pitched. Old-fashioned Texas independence.
All right. This is my pawpaw.
And Jimmy is my grandson.
As a Baptist preacher in South Texas, he taught me to follow the 2 great commandments. Love God
and love your neighbor.
I've tried to follow those teachings, first as a public school teacher,
and now as a Texas lawmaker,
providing relief to those struggling to afford their health care, their housing, their groceries.
That's loving your neighbor.
I'm James Tallarico, and I approve this message.
Amen.
You're never going to make it in Hollywood.
No.
Loving your neighbor is a real theme of his campaign. He's trying to tie his religious beliefs to the Democratic talking points. And as you heard, he calls loving your neighbour affordability, and obviously immigration fits in there as well. Lots and lots of talk about Ken Paxton being corrupt. This is, without doubt, the most watched ad in Texas over the last 2 weeks.
This is Ken Paxton, and this is Ken Paxton stealing someone's $1,000 pen. Here's what happened. The incident happened at the Collin County Courthouse, the same courthouse where Paxton would later be indicted for investment fraud. Paxton walked up to the trays next to the metal detectors, rummaged through them, and came across someone else's expensive Mont Blanc pen. He decided to take it for himself. The pen belonged to Joe Joplin, a local attorney who'd accidentally left it behind. It was a special gift from his wife. When Joe realized it was missing, he contacted courthouse security. This is the footage they pulled. Ken Paxton, on camera, stealing this man's pen. After the police got involved, Joe got his pen back. He could have pressed charges, but he decided against it. Because Joe's a nice guy. He'd never take someone else's pen. But he also hasn't forgotten who took his.
Hi, I'm Joe Joplin, and I endorse James Tallarico for the United States Senate.
Vote for James Tallarico. He won't steal your pen.
Is it that surprising that Tallarico is ahead of Paxton on crime?
No, I suppose. It's unusual for a Democrat, but you make a good point. Once again, getting the endorsement of a Republican. He's constantly trotting out endorsements of Republicans. That is his strategy. So that's what he's doing. Now, Ken Paxton, he's doing what Texas Republicans have done for a very long time. He's doing scare campaigns and culture wars.
1, 2, 3.
She dreams of growing up, falling in love, becoming a mother.
4, 5, 6.
Keep counting.
7.
The trans industry preys on confused children. Irreversible puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, sex change surgeries. This November, stop them before it's too late.
Seems that Tallarico personally is going to change the sex of your daughter against her will.
I'm kind of amazed that it's legal to run ads like that. Like, for people who are listening, it's an AI-generated ad where Tallarico is like a creepy surgeon, like about to operate on an unwilling child. But that's his image. And it's just, I know. And it's based on absolute lies. And it's just amazing that you can just put that out there.
I'm pretty sure he's not a creepy surgeon in real life.
I don't think so.
It's dishonest in so many ways. It's also dishonest that he doesn't even support gender reassignment surgery for children at all. So it's just completely dishonest. And also, as far as scare campaigns go, I don't know if you're across this or whether the Peppers are, but it starts off with this girl like pulling the petals of a daisy. I mean, it's supposed to be reminiscent of the LBJ ad about the world being blown up by a nuclear bomb, which started off exactly the same way. So they're trying to draw a comparison between creepy surgeon James Tallarico and a nuclear bomb hitting this girl.
I don't understand. I don't know enough about the American legal system as it pertains to political advertising, but I don't understand where the line is between that and just going on and being like, my opponent is a pedophile.
Yeah.
Can you just say anything? It feels like you can just say anything.
Look, it's a good question. I think we'll find out where the line is during this campaign, Melina.
You know what I find interesting, though, just going back to the Tallarico ad about the pen, Ken Paxton stealing the pen. Yeah. The thing that is interesting to me about that is that, we've kind of seen this years-long strategy of very kind of earnest, and understandably, critiques of Trump and his associates, like corruption and, illegality and things like that. And that's both, the pen thing is both true, but kind of funny. Yeah. In contrast to the, democracy is on the ballot, it's the end of the American experiment, which is all kind of quite earnest and serious and grounded in these sort of high-minded principles and legal arguments and things like that, which people have clearly not responded to, for better or worse. This is kind of like, this guy's a criminal, but kind of in a way that's like funny. And I find that a really compelling ad. And I wonder whether voters will as well.
Well, all his ads are fun. Like the grandpa ad before it. They're all fun. Like that's his vibe. He's trying to be non-threatening. He's trying to be non-threatening. He's trying to be fun.
Except when he's being a creepy surgeon operating on children. Then he's very threatening.
Well, yeah. He should
never have agreed to appear in that ad.
Exactly. He should have quit being a creepy surgeon a long time ago if he was going to run for office. The main issue that Paxton's got is that he's got no money. He's got no money because he's a terrible fundraiser. He's got no money because his favorability numbers are in the toilet. And he's got no money because the Texans who do donate to Republicans all love John Cornyn, the guy he beat. John Cornyn was going to raise a mint. And they all knew this was the risk of getting Paxton over John Cornyn. Well, now they're living it. He's got no money. Republicans, like the RNC, I told you before about how they can just dump money. They don't want to dump money on him. They think it's a waste. They're going, we've got all these other states that we need to keep afloat. Why are we keeping this guy afloat? You know who should pay for him? Trump should pay for him because he's the one who created the problem. So he's got a $400 million super PAC. Use it on your buddy. And that's what they say.
Good argument.
Yeah. And so far, Trump hasn't spent a cent, which goes to what you were saying before.
He's got a presidential library to pay for.
Yes. Look, I think he's going to end up spending some money on him. He's holding a fundraiser this week. So I think he was just waiting till the end. So I think he's going to spend some money. But we'll see. If he doesn't, that's going to screw Paxton over because then all he'll have is Elon Musk. And Elon Musk is cash, but not necessarily effective cash. So that's the issue Paxton has. And he's got every advantage in the world being in Texas. But Texas is an expensive market, Melina. It's a very expensive market, and he is behind. So we'll see how that works out. Now, I handball over to you. Do you have anything to say about Texas?
Yeah, something that's sort of been interesting, like a lot of those issues you mentioned in the polling are issues that are, key in many races across America. And one of the things that has been like quite a big issue specifically in Texas for local reasons that have just kind of been popping up now and then that's sort of worth talking about is Islamophobia. It played quite a major role in the primary campaign between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. And it's continuing to be a factor. They basically tried to out-Islamophobe each other in the primary campaign. And concern about Islamic radicalism was apparently polling among the top issues for Republican primary voters, according to a Republican campaign consultants. So even though it sort of seems a little bit out of nowhere, it was a really salient issue in the primaries at least.
Is this something that's happening in the governor's race in particular, or is it happening in the Senate race?
It was happening in the Senate race between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. They were running ads.
No, I know in the primary, but I'm saying now.
Now.
I mean, because Tallarico, he doesn't strike me as a stalking horse for Islamic radicals.
Well, it's something that continues to be an issue in politics in Texas. And Greg Abbott, who's running for election for governor, he's talking about it a lot still. Ken Paxton's been very involved in this. So it's very much just in the political waters in Texas at the moment. Okay. Like, I don't actually think that it's likely to have a big impact on the results of the election, but it does have a big impact on the Muslim population in Texas. Sure. And therefore, I think it's worth talking about because it's a conversation that has been happening there for many months.
Yeah, go for it.
And the question is why? Why is Islamophobia suddenly, not suggesting it ever went away, but, it was not a major talking point in the way it has been recently between, the sort of 9/11 era and now. So part of the reason is with Trump back in the White House, immigration and the border has become a less salient issue for Republicans. Yeah. And they're looking for a new thing to talk about. Why Islam? The reason is because the Muslim community in Texas has been growing quite significantly over the past couple of decades.
Are these Indian Muslims or are these Middle Eastern Muslims?
These are Muslims from other parts of America. in large part.
Okay, right.
But from everywhere.
Because I know there's a big Indian intake in Texas. Well, when you go on Twitter, you see a lot of racist people talking about the Indians in Texas.
Sure. I don't think it's specifically from one. I think Texas has become a bit of a magnet for Muslims. I mean, potentially from overseas as well, but also in terms of internal migration. Yeah. Partly because for the reasons a lot of people are moving to southern states. Low taxes, good schools, more affordable housing. Texas is also a conservative state. A lot of Muslims are conservative in terms of their values. And it's also the case that, once you start to get people from a minority group moving to a particular area, it attracts more people because then people see, oh, there's a community down there. Or maybe I'll join that community. Maybe I will also go to that place for the reason. And that's sort of been happening online. People in the growing community have talked about it online. Yep. People from other parts of the country have become attracted to that. So this has been happening over a long time, particularly around Dallas area. And with that growth in the community comes more visibility in terms of other people being able to see, there's been a growing number of mosques. So in the 4 biggest Dallas-Fort Worth counties, there were 76 mosques in 2020, which is a bit old now, but this is the latest I could find, but up from 28 2 decades earlier. So it's 3 times. I mean, for context, in those 4 counties, there's more than 3,000 evangelical Christian congregations.
I was going to say.
So we're not talking about like...
Dallas and Fort Worth combined are very, very, very big areas.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that this is an invasion.
No, sure.
But people have noticed. And there was a turning point, which was that early last year, there was a proposal made for a planned community centered around a new mosque on farmland near Dallas. So it's a planned community that's basically for Muslims. It's not officially for Muslims only, but realistically, it's being built for Muslims. There's going to be a mosque in the middle.
Yeah.
This is, who it's designed to attract. And that development proposal sparked a huge backlash, both in the local community, but then it got picked up politically. In particular, the Governor, Greg Abbott, and Attorney General Ken Paxton, who is also now the candidate for Senate, sensed the backlash, and they got all over it. And they started saying they were going to try to block the development legally. They're still attempting that through the courts, have not been successful so far, but, still fighting it. And they also just started attacking Muslims in general across Texas. They started opening investigations into Muslim institutions across Texas. Greg Abbott threatened to take state funding away from Texas airports that provide ritual washing stations for Muslim travelers. And Dallas is like a major airport.
I should say that they already have some foot washing stations, but he just wanted to take the money away from having more foot washing stations for some reason.
There was he's basically just trying to threaten to take state funding anywhere that he can kind of have a fight with a Muslim. Because there was a Muslim woman who rented out a city-owned water park, which is available to rent out for private functions. She rented it out. This was the 3rd year she'd done it. She was renting it for Muslim families to celebrate Eid. Obviously, it's not always comfortable for people of the Muslim faith to go swimming in public areas. There are, Muslim compliant swimming costumes you can wear, but then that makes them very visible. Sometimes people aren't comfortable with that. Basically, she was like, let's start this event for Muslim families to be able to just relax and be comfortable celebrating in the water for Eid. It became very popular. The first year she did it again the second year. Again, no incident. She tried to do it a 3rd year. And the advertisement initially said that it was just for Muslims, and that got picked up in the 3rd instance, went viral. She started getting, as you can imagine, a bazillion death threats, and Greg Abbott threatened to take state funding he threatened $500,000 worth of grants from the city if they didn't shut down this event for the Muslim families at the water park. Even though when the backlash started, she took off the Muslims only thing and was like, it's for everyone. I'm just trying to indicate that it's kind of for Muslims. But you can come if you're willing to respect the customs and the dress and what we're doing here, because it's a party for Eid. Fine, come, but let's be real, we're just trying to do something for the community. So he got that shut down. He's also trying to ban Sharia law in Texas somehow. Texas Republicans have started a Sharia-Free America caucus in Congress.
Okay.
So this is spreading to the national level already. State lawmakers are looking at ways to redefine Islam as different to religion so that they can deny them the constitutional protections that they clearly are granted.
Yeah.
This has been tried before. In 2010 in Tennessee, residents tried to stop a new mosque, arguing it wasn't entitled to be treated as a house of worship because Islam isn't a religion. And the Justice Department at the time filed a brief saying Islam is plainly a religion protected by the First Amendment. Whether the current Justice Department would behave in similar ways, who can say?
We may find out.
But yeah, this is basically just something that has been, like, in significant ways, a quite furious political focus in Texas at the state level, at the governor level, and now increasingly in terms of the national representation for Texas. And it is revealing and depressing that a certain portion of the electorate, having seen the issue of the border, like, oh, cool, like, we're not so stressed about that anymore. Who can we hate on now? Like, that's clearly a thing. But this kind of it's an issue that's a little bit under the radar at the national level, but it's quite potent and toxic in the Texas race at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like it's almost like, I mean, it's probably not the case, but it's almost like because Texas is missing a few key culture war issues that other states have, they need to make up some of their own. Like, because a lot of people won't be aware of this. Texas doesn't have any of the environmental style culture war issues that other places do, because Texas is by an absolute mile America's biggest solar power and wind power center. And so all the issues that the rest of America fights culture wars about when it comes to environment, it's not the case in Texas. They all, it's all paths lead to profit. It's and cheap energy. So it's like, so since they have that one, it's like they've got to make up another one. No, this is what they've gone with. It's interesting. Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I mean, I know Greg Abbott is locked in a really tough battle because Gina Hinojosa, I've forgotten how you pronounce her name, Gina Hinojosa and the Democratic nominee is kind of working with Tallarico in a way. Like they're kind of, I mean, Tallarico's got a different campaign to her, but they do draft off each other a bit. And I think she's doing better because Tallarico's there than she would if it was Jasmine Crockett. And so, yeah, Abbott's under the gun. And I guess that's how he's responding. Lovely. Okay, I'm looking at the clock here for you, Melina. So I'm going to do just one quick thing, and then I'll throw to your vaccine bit to finish off, okay? This is something that was left over from last week, so I just want to just make sure it's not 3 weeks old by the time I get to it. This is something that I told you was coming a few weeks ago, almost a month ago now. But it's worth noting, it's here. It's here! The Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network has announced that it is permanently halting the collection of data about the ownership of private American companies. And nearly all of that data is going to be destroyed. Now, that was a mouthful. You might not know what that even means. What the hell am I talking about? Let me give you some context. For years, America was the go-to place for anonymous shell companies. It wasn't the Cayman Islands. It wasn't Switzerland. It wasn't Liechtenstein, all the cliched countries. No, it was America. For $100 and 15 minutes of your time, you could set up a shell company in Delaware, say, or Nevada, or Wyoming, and you could hide all your financial tracks in there for any crime you like, and it was really, really hard to expose you. The crime is still illegal, of course. It doesn't become legal because it's in a shell company, but proving it becomes tough. Or, of course, you can use your shell company to hide your assets, to evade taxes with. They like doing that a lot. Perfect for human traffickers, for cartels, for drug dealers, for terrorists, all the people that Trump's supposedly tough on. Shell companies make these kinds of activities both untraceable, and the shell company themselves is totally legal. Yay! Now, with Citizens United in 2010, you could take all of that dodgy money and you could use it to secretly pay off politicians through super PACs as well. Even better. At least that's how it used to be. Then in 2021, a fearless young senator spearheaded the Corporate Transparency Act, Would you care to guess who that fearless young senator was? No. Why don't we bring it up? That fearless young senator was Marco Rubio. My Corporate Transparency Act, the most significant anti-corruption and money laundering law in decades, which forces anonymous shell companies to disclose their true owners, is going to pass as part of the end-of-year defence bill. And indeed it did pass. He was right. It was great. What a great piece of legislation, Marco. It passed right at the beginning of 2021, right at the end of Trump, on a bipartisan basis, over the top of Trump's veto. That's how overwhelming the vote was. That's how predictable Trump was. Of course, Trump was going to hate this piece of legislation. But it took effect finally in 2024. We shouldn't oversell this, okay? There's still lots of room for dodginess in America. This was a relatively toothless law, but it was a start. Unlike in Europe, the ownership data remained private. You couldn't publicly access it. It was just for federal officials and investigators. It didn't affect trusts either, so there's plenty of secrecy in trusts. But it's an important step because corporate owners had to disclose for the first time who was in control to federal investigators, which saved them a lot of time. Now, Trump comes in, doesn't like this at all. He exempts domestic companies immediately and US citizens from data collection right off the bat. Says, no, we'll just leave it for foreigners. Of course, almost everyone is a domestic company with shell companies. It went from 32.6 million companies needing to report to the government to 11,667 companies. And now with this move, the exemption is permanent. This is what they have to say. Scott Bessent says, today's actions are victory for common sense and American small businesses. President Trump promised to cut red tape, and this final rule delivers. Treasury's eliminating a burdensome reporting requirement for millions of law-abiding business owners without compromising our national security. In the Fair Dinkum Department, honest businesses, they still have to report the relevant names, addresses, dates of birth, and government ID numbers to the bank when they're transacting with the bank. They just don't have to file that same information with the federal government. They're saving it 5 minutes. That's what they're saving. 5 big minutes. And at the same time, it's increasing huge costs for the whole system because it means the government now has to undertake all those investigations by themselves with warrants and all the rest of it. And it's hard. It's really hard. That's why people use shell companies. They make it hard. So what this means is if you're a criminal and you can find a dodgy financial institution, you can open an account with imperfect information and you'll probably get away with it. That's nice. But it's not just Trump. Republicans in Congress are trying to pass legislation that is going to formally repeal this Marco Rubio-sponsored bill. So future administrations can't restart the database. Because right now, if a Democrat takes over, they'll just restart the database immediately and it'll be back. But they're trying to make this permanent. They've got a huge case of regret about this law. They're really sorry they passed this law. But even though this isn't just Trump has been uniquely pro-corruption. He eliminated the task force on kleptocrats. He paused the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, so now they're not enforcing laws against bribing foreign officials. He gutted the Foreign Agents Registration Act. He pardoned dozens of white-collar criminals. He removed resources from white-collar crime enforcement in the Department of Justice. They've gone from 3 dozen lawyers working on public integrity at the DOJ to, wait for it, 2 whole lawyers for the entire country. The team that policed law-breaking in the crypto industry has been disbanded entirely. And there's a final little twist. While rich criminals can now stash away billions of dollars in secret shell companies if they wish and no one will ever find it, if you happen to send $200 to Mexico to your family back in Mexico, Trump is using anti-money laundering laws to force you to give formal notice to the feds. That's where we're at. Do you have any thoughts, Melina?
No, it just all sounds really awesome.
Yes. It's just the best. Okay, Melina, over to you with vaccines.
All right.
This is your traditional topic.
Yes, I know. Always falls to me to talk about the vaccines.
Yes.
Why do we have to keep talking about it? Because things keep happening.
They do.
2 weeks ago, Trump signed an executive order on vaccines.
Yes.
He truthed out to mark the occasion, among other things. These things are always so long, and there's still always an excerpt. Anyway, effective today, America will no longer require 72 jabs for our beautiful, healthy children. We are moving to a far more reasonable schedule where all children will only be recommended to receive vaccinations for 11 of the most serious and dangerous diseases. Parents can still choose to give their children all of the vaccinations if they wish, and they will still be covered by insurance. However, this updated schedule finally aligns the United States with other developed nations around the world. And accompanying this post was a little infographic.
Oh, let's have a look. Oh, God, look at that. Yeah.
So for the people listening, we have 2 images of the same baby. On the one side, we have it labeled European country. Doesn't specify which one, though it is the singular. And it says 11 injections, and there's a clip art picture of a baby with a neutral face, I would say, with 11 needles around it.
That's quite a brave baby.
It's
11 needles.
It's a very brave baby.
That's a lot of needles.
Yes, a lot of these. This does look a bit scary, even with the 11.
Yeah.
But the baby is not happy because that would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
But neutral face baby.
Yeah.
And on the other side, it says United States, 72 injections, and we have a same baby but looking very sad with 72 needles literally surrounding this baby.
That's understandable.
He looks very. I would be unhappy.
That's too many needles.
It's too many
for
needles.
That baby.
We should probably just not give him any. Very sad baby. So let's learn more about Trump's executive order by breaking down why this specific graphic is so stupid. For people who are listening, you don't need to understand any more than what I've described. But we have one baby, 11 injections, another baby, 72 injections. Okay. What are these 72 injections that the sad baby is getting? The White House's fact sheet that accompanied the executive order unhelpfully said kids get 84 vaccine doses in 57 shots for 17 diseases. So none of that is consistent with this graphic. But let's just ignore that because I don't know what those numbers refer to.
Okay.
The 72 number, basically what that refers to is if a child got every recommended vaccine according to the current schedule by the age of 18, including a flu and COVID shot every single year, which accounts for around half of that total.
Yes.
It would be 72 vaccine doses over those 18 years.
That baby wasn't 18 years old, though.
No.
No.
If you gave 72 vaccines to a baby in one go, that would be very bad.
Yes.
That's definitely not what's happening.
No, but
that would never happen.
72 over 18 years, if they get every possible injection, many of which they won't get.
Yes.
Right.
But also, not all vaccines are shots. The rotavirus, for example, is an oral vaccination. So even then, you wouldn't actually get 72 shots. So that is also wrong.
Okay.
Also, the 11 injections that the other baby is getting is referring to the 11 diseases that Trump's executive order now recommends kids get.
Oh, okay.
But that's conditions that it's treating, not number of vaccines. Many of these vaccines are ones you have to get a number of times over a number of years.
So they're not telling the truth about Europe either.
So they're not telling the truth about 11 vaccines either.
Okay.
Because it's more than that. And additionally, Trump's executive order says combination shots. They specifically name the MMR shot, measles, mumps, rubella.
Yes.
But they also say that they should look into future ones. But with that one, they say that should be administered as single shots, based on no medically supported reasoning whatsoever.
So then there'll be more shots.
Right,
okay.
That's a
sad baby, though.
Yeah, that's a sad baby. That's a 2-shot vaccine.
Yeah.
If you split that into 3, that's turning 2 shots into 6 shots.
6 shots, yeah.
Yep.
And there are other combination.
There are other combination
as well.
shots.
Yeah. There's a 5 vaccine.
Yes.
So that would turn 5 shots into 15 shots.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah,
That's the diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis one that you're referring to, which is currently 5 shots, would be 15 if we followed this guidance.
Okay. So there's more. So they want more shots now.
So they want less and they want more. It's kind of confusing. It's also definitely not something that peer countries in Europe do. The whole point of this executive order is to align America with peer countries. They do not give these combination shots as single doses. They give them as single doses. Every EU country uses the MMR combo vaccine.
Well, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that in Europe they actually have bigger combos.
I don't know, but
I'm pretty sure. Let me look it up. I'm pretty sure in Europe they've got the MMR is MMR something else. There's 4 of them. So it seems to be ignoring Europe somewhat there. Can I ask you a question? Because you're explaining things so well. Maybe you'll be able to explain this. You couldn't explain why the brochure had a different number of shots to Trump, but maybe you can explain why RFK in the same press conference also had a different number of shots. Because RFK said there were 94 shots. So can you explain that?
No, I can't.
No, okay. It was worth a try. They seem to be very confused about the number of shots that they're promoting and the number of shots that currently exist.
Yes. So by my count, if you follow their recommendations for which conditions kids should be vaccinated against and split up the MMR vaccine, as they also want to in this executive order, a child would get 27 to 28 shots by age 18. There's one of the vaccines has a final dose that's optional. So 27 to 28 shots.
Okay.
So someone needs to add more needles to this clip art. But also the executive order directs RFK to make plans within 90 days to break up all combo vaccines into single shots. So then if we add the DTaP shot, which turns 5 shots into 15 shots, we're now looking at 37 to 38 shots that the Trump baby is getting instead of 11. What is the problem they're trying to address? Is it too many injections or too many vaccines taken at the same time? Because you can only solve one of these fake problems.
I was throwing 2 things here. First of all, I found what I was talking about. In Denmark, the MMR vaccine is combined with a hepatitis booster. So it's an MMRV vaccine. So there we go. But secondly, there's another element to this, and I dare not mention this to Trump or RFK because this will blow their little minds. But at the end of the day, the thing that matters is not shots or doses or whatever, it's antigens. Antigens are the things that the vaccine part of the vaccine, right? And the entire modern vaccine schedule from beginning to end involves 165 antigens. But babies and young children encounter anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 antigens every single day. Right? So, and I'm talking for the whole 18 years, 165 antigens. And in the past...
Any person with a kid in daycare will not be surprised by that.
Yes. In the past, they used to have way more antigens because over time they've been reducing the antigens, like making the vaccine smaller and smaller and smaller, which Trump doesn't seem to acknowledge. But so that's the other thing. The shot doesn't matter so much as the antigen. If you think it's a problem. But they don't even talk about antigens.
Yes.
And I can see why they don't, because it doesn't help them.
Yes.
Yes.
So yes, aside from the fact that their numbers are incoherent,
yes,
there are problems with splitting up combination vaccines that we should acknowledge.
Let's do that.
The obvious first one is that it is encouraging general vaccine hesitancy, just creating all this confusion, insinuating that there are problems with vaccines that are well-established, evidence-based. But aside from that, splitting them up makes it harder for even people who do want to still get the protection of vaccines.
Of course.
Because every shot is a trip to the doctor, which is hard enough in somewhere like Australia, harder in America. It costs money. Splitting them up unnecessarily increases the chances that people will accidentally miss doses because you have to remember all of these shots, all of these visits. Like a lot of them are due around the same time. That's why they're combined. So you're having to go back again and again. You might have to take time off work to take your kid to the doctor.
You got to pay for it.
Got to pay for it. All of these things create...
Your kid has to agree to it.
Yeah. Yes. Why didn't I even think of that? God, yes. Yes. All of these things add barriers to something that you want to make as frictionless as possible to get levels up to herd immunity, which is what you need for it to be effective for everybody. There also are no single-dose vaccines for these diseases marketed in the US.
Yeah.
So companies would have to start making them, which they don't want to do because why would they want to?
Merck has said it'll take at least 10 years to create single vaccines.
Yes.
So just on what you were saying before, though, about how this could create vaccine hesitancy because, or at least under-vaccination. Because even if it's not hesitant, just because they just don't get the 6 shots. I'll just say 2 things about that. The first thing is a cynic. Now, I know you're not cynical. You're quite innocent. But a cynic might suggest that's exactly the point of this policy from an anti-vaxxer point of view to try and reduce vaccinations. And that cynic, if they were citing evidence of that, they would note that Andrew Wakefield, the patron saint of all anti-vaxxers, the original anti-vaxxer back in the 90s, he proposed exactly this idea back in the 90s. Interesting. So that's the first thing. But the second thing I'd say is that you might listen to us and you might go, oh, you guys are so smug. Look at you there. You're like J.D. Vance. Yeah, you guys think you know it all. But in the real world, it wouldn't work like that. If people want the vaccine, they can go get the vaccine. What's wrong with that? There was a natural experiment on this a couple of years back in Japan.
I was just about to say.
Oh, sorry. Will you tell us about Japan?
Okay.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, there's a cautionary tale. This was in Stat Magazine, which is a medical journal. And they found, looked at, in 1989, was Japan had an issue with their MMR vaccine at the time, which is different to the one that we use today. And in response to that, they moved to individual vaccines for measles, mumps, and rubella. And this is quoting from the magazine. Mumps is still endemic in Japan today. There were more than 300 cases of mumps-induced hearing loss in 2015 and 2016, according to one survey. Measles vaccination rates fell to 83% in 2001. A measles outbreak that year affected an estimated 265,000 children. Japan also had a rubella epidemic in 2012. We can't link either example directly to the MMR withdrawal. Obviously, there are other factors in a story playing out over many years, but they demonstrate the risks of low or spotty vaccination rates. Meanwhile, the MMR withdrawal had no effect on autism rates.
That's a great point at the end there. All I'd add to what you just said is that my understanding is it took until 2011. Bear in mind, this began in around 1990. It took till 2011 for them to get vaccine rates back up to herd immunity for measles.
Yeah.
So it stuffed them up for over 20 years. Yeah, that's not a good experiment.
Yeah, and this is happening in a context where they've had some of the worst measles outbreaks in America this year in a long time, decades. So just in terms of will anything change?
Yes.
Probably not anytime soon, because it's not a mandate that doctors do this way or companies provide these vaccines. It's just a recommendation ultimately. But there are some things in it that are problematic beyond the stuff we've already discussed. First of all, this is being litigated in the courts. They already tried to change vaccine recommendations back in January, which is still in the courts. But because they failed to consult the Center for Disease Control, that's the reason it's being held up.
And did they consult the Center for Disease Control for this?
The CDC schedule has not changed.
But there's by this executive order. Did they consult the CDC for this executive order? No, they didn't. They didn't learn at all.
The executive order does direct the Attorney General to consider suing states that don't have sufficient religious and medical exemptions for vaccine mandates.
Okay.
So that's a potentially new front
Wonderful.
on which to loosen vaccine uptake more. In general, I think the worst effect probably will be on increased vaccine hesitancy, which is a slow-moving disaster. It's not going to change overnight, but as in the Japan case, it can have real long-tail effects. And it also affects other aspects of children's healthcare. So there's been a decline in people consenting to give infants vitamin K shots at birth, which I was reading about the other day, which isn't even a vaccine. It's a vitamin shot. The reason you give it at birth is it can prevent severe bleeding, which is associated with vitamin K deficiencies. Babies are born without a lot of vitamin K in them because they don't get it well through the placenta, and you can have hemorrhaging. And that was the percentage of babies that were not getting the shot because parents were not consenting, was 5.2% in 2024, up from 2.9% in 2017, which means tens of thousands of more unprotected babies. And the effects are really devastating when you get a hemorrhage.
Yeah, of course.
It's not tracked nationally, the numbers on that, but experts estimate as many as 1 in 60 untreated infants, or 1.7%, will suffer a bleed in the first week of life. So this is, again, just like the flow-on effects. Less healthcare for kids is bad, and these things all encourage less healthcare for kids, even if it doesn't mandate it. So I just wanted to touch on those points as well. But in terms of why,
just before you do that, I was just going to say that you make a good point about why this matters, but I just on what you were saying before about the legal issues. Also, states have long since stopped paying attention to what RFK comes out with. this is a map of the states who are coloured blue in this picture, who now ignore the federal government's recommendations because Trump and RFK have buggered everything up. So that's a fair whack of America right there. And also, all the major medical and scientific associations immediately stated they would not be following these recommendations. But I take your point that there's still issues as a result. Yeah. So you were saying that you're about to explain the impeccable logic of this executive order.
Yes. Well, I think there's something that is worth addressing, which we haven't really talked about before, is that I kind of think it's fair to say Trump is an anti-vaxxer. Like, we've talked about RFK a lot.
Yeah.
But I think Trump himself, there's plenty of evidence, at least not to the extent of RFK, but is by a lot of people's definition himself an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
And that he's not being pushed in that direction by RFK.
No.
RFK is in that job in the first place because Trump already believes a lot of this stuff.
Trump was hassling him to do this.
Yes. So the Wall Street Journal reported in July that Trump pushed RFK to do more to investigate the alleged connection between vaccines and autism and accused RFK of having the yips about it all. So White House staffers had been telling RFK, tone it down ahead of the midterms, talk about healthy food and stuff. And he was complying. But every time Trump gets in a room with him, he's like, what are you doing? What's going on with the vaccines and autism stuff? The Wall Street Journal report said Trump steers nearly every conversation with his health secretary back to this issue. So Trump is the one who's pushing this more than RFK. Trump said the MMR vaccine is quite lethal, despite that being obviously untrue, and despite the US being in the middle of its worst series of measles outbreaks in 30 years. I would say he's not as anti-vaxxer as RFK in the sense that there are some vaccines Trump likes. He's quite fond of the polio vaccine, for example, which RFK has incorrectly said killed more people than actual polio. But Trump has a very long record of talking about this stuff. This is not new. So in 2014, he tweeted, "Healthy young child goes to doctor, gets pumped with massive shot of many vaccines, doesn't feel good and changes. Autism, many such cases."
Autism!
And he also tweeted at the same time, "If I were president, I would push for proper vaccinations, but would not allow one-time massive shots that a small child cannot take. Autism!"
Autism!
Just amusingly, there are a lot of replies to that tweet saying, "Good thing you'll never be president." Oh no. Bang your head in shame. Yes. So there's that. But also, back in 2007, he gave an interview where he said, "When I was growing up, autism wasn't really a factor. And now all of a sudden, it's an epidemic. Everybody has their theory. My theory, and I study it because I have young children, my theory is the shots. We've been giving these massive injections at one time, and I really think it does something to the children." And then he said, in reference to then 22-month-old Barron, "What we've done with Barron, we've taken him on a very slow process. He gets one shot at a time. Then we wait a few months and give him another shot, the old-fashioned way. But today they pump the children with so much at a very young age. We do it on a very, very conservative level." He did this with his own kid 20 years ago. So this is not some new fixation.
I don't understand. Didn't we just ascertain that there is no such thing as a single measles vaccine?
I guess if you're a billionaire, you can probably get one.
That's very strange. Yeah, no, I guess, he did it on his own kid. I've got some highlights from the press conference where he was talking about this when you're ready, just to hear him talk through, because I love the way he talks about this. This is like as you say, in this press conference, he was talking about lethality of this. So, for instance, this is one example.
I saw this early on, and I've seen proof of it, where they have a vaccination that looks like the size of a bottle of soda poured into a little child's body, and bad things happen in too many cases, because this is an explosion. This is an epidemic.
Okay, so a bowl of soda. Just remember that when I tell you that in reality, one dose of a childhood vaccine, such as the MMR shot, contains roughly 1/10 of a teaspoon of fluid. A bottle of soda. He also said that combined vaccines can be quite lethal, as you said. Reporters asked him to back that up. This is what he said.
I think I heard you say that the MMR vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella is quite lethal. Is there any evidence of that?
What I've heard is that there are There are some people that say it is that way. And I say, well, let's say there's a 5% chance of it. Let's split it up. Because they do say that given individual, MMR, that given individual, there is no impact. In fact, they've said how safe it seems to be. But I've heard when you put them together, they can be explosive. Yeah.
His evidence is that some people said that.
I'm very convinced.
That some person, I think, is Donald Trump. And yeah, but obviously it's not lethal, we should say. There is, look, to be fair, there is the risk of febrile convulsions with MMR vaccines. I myself got a whole stack of febrile convulsions when I was a kid. I don't know if it was from a vaccine or not. It might have just been because I was sick as hell. But
yeah, you get them from fevers.
Yeah, totally.
Babies can get them fevers.
But they're benign. They don't kill you. And there's no sense of cognitive impairment. In fact, okay, I probably shouldn't say this. My mum insists my febrile convulsions may be smarter. She said, every single time you have a convulsion, you learnt more words. You learnt to read during all your convulsions. You were like 18 months old and you learnt to read because of your convulsions. I'm pretty sure that's not how it worked, Mum. She's the RFK of the future, I think, my mum. But anyway...
It's like reverse RFK. Like a bad medical thing happens and you get superpowers.
Yes. Anyway, you might think this is stupid but harmless. But just wait for this. This is my favorite of all the grabs. Listen to this one.
What I'm doing, I'm saying, what do you have to lose? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Nobody's going to get hurt by it. MMR. Right. If you give them separately, the M, and the R, it's fine. When you put them together, they're sort of like a nuclear weapon, according to some.
A nuclear weapon!
A lot of things are like nuclear weapons in today's day and age.
Yes.
Vaccines, trans rights.
It's a very dangerous time, Melina. Anyway, so I just want to share them with you because I really enjoyed those. Where were you going? But you're probably, I imagine the next place you were going was to autism. Is that right or no?
I was just going to, I kind of feel like that's been fairly debunked. We probably don't need to debunk it again. I think it's just, the point is, he's obviously, he can say, it doesn't do any harm to break them up. And he clearly lived by that himself, right? Like that's how he chose to treat his own kid. And if you do get all of your shots and you can afford to do that and you have the time and resources to do that, probably doesn't do any harm. I don't think it has any benefit, but it doesn't hurt as long as you get, or at least as far as I'm aware, as long as you get every vaccine that you need to get. But just for the reasons we've discussed, too many people are not going to be able to do that. And so it's just sort of, the best, you referred to being cynical earlier, the most generous interpretation of this is that he genuinely believes this is better based on his gut feeling and thinks everyone should live by it, but without, but living in a fantasy land where everyone has the same resources that he and his family have had where this is achievable. And that's the best version of this. The worst version is that there are at least some people, whether it's Trump or others, who are deliberately trying to discourage vaccine uptake. Both things could also be true. But basically, it is worth making the point that if vaccination rates fall across the US and we see a surge in measles, mumps, rubella, any other condition that's dropping off the list, a lot of it will be RFK's fault, but let's not let Trump off the hook either because he is actively pushing this stuff himself.
I think that's a great call. And the fact that he just assumes everyone's got the same resources he does is also a great point. I am not going to let autism just go, just like you said. I know we've talked about it a million times, but every time we play Trump suggesting that this has something to do with autism, I just want to point out the same stats I do every time, and I'll do it again because you don't hear these enough, and they keep on trying out this bullshit. Diagnoses of whether you call it severe autism or profound autism or grade whatever autism, there are a lot of different names for it, but the serious autism was 1.5 per 1,000 children in 2000. It was 1.2 per 1,000 children in 2016. It went down. But for mild autism, The minor stuff, the stuff that some of your favorite podcasters have. The diagnosis for 8-year-olds has gone from 3.1 per 1,000 children to 7.3 per 1,000 children is obviously about more diagnosis of mild spectrum behavior. We all know that's happening. It's just, Trump was talking about common sense. That's common sense. We all know that more people with mild symptoms are getting picked up than used to get picked up. This is about diagnosis. It's not about all of a sudden there's an autism epidemic. If it was, then severe autism would be increasing by the same rate. And it's going down. So you need to say that every single time. I want to say one other thing, which has got nothing to do with this. I want to give RFK credit for one thing, and I might be wrong on this. I'm going to let you be the judge. I'm going to give him credit for having a sense of humour about his mobile phone ringtone. I'm going to play it to you, and you tell me whether you think I'm being too generous in giving him the benefit of the doubt here, or if he's really that dumb that he doesn't know what his mobile phone ringtone is insinuating.
Children with autism are 100 times more likely to drown than neurotypical children. We have a responsibility to do better. On an autistic, sorry about that.
I'm giving him benefit of the doubt that he knows people think he's a quack and he's having some fun with it. That's what I think. I don't think he could accidentally give himself a ringtone of a quack that goes over and over again and not realize the connotations. But maybe he is just that dumb. What do you think?
I am inclined to think he's not that dumb. Mostly, and does have a sense of humor because he's married to Cheryl Hines. I always just sort of remember that. I'm a huge Curb Your Enthusiasm fan. It's always just slightly jarring when I remember that. But, he's friends with Larry David. I don't think these really funny, famously world-class funny people would have close personal relationships with someone who was just completely humorless and dumb. So I think you're probably right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm taking my hat off on that one thing alone. so well done, RFK. Melina, you are so out of time. You have just given us way too much of your time. Thank you very much for that.
No worries.
I'll see you in a little over a week.
Yes.
For part 2 of the Festival of PEP. And I'll see you guys after the White Flash for about 5-10 minutes of correspondence, and then we're out of here. Hey! Welcome to the other side of the White Flash. This is Correspondence Central. Just 2. I just want to get these off the table.
2 that we absolutely had to fit in.
Yes. First of all, very important topic. Haircuts leading to showers directly afterwards. Very important topic. An enormous amount of support for showering directly after haircuts, Lockie. Are you the same? Do you need a shower after a haircut?
I think that it's a self-selecting category. If you are a pepper, you need a shower after a haircut.
It does seem that way. We are legion, peppers. There are so many of you who agreed with me. Who were saying, Dave's the weird one. Yanni took it further, though. Yanni wrote, Chaz, I relate deeply on the shower after barber thing. Question, how do you feel about neckties? You are talking my language, Yanni. I hate neckties. I'm going to tell you 2 quick stories. People ask for more personal stories, so I'm going to tell you 2 quickies. 1, at my wedding, I only had 1 dress code. That was it. And the dress code was no ties.
No way.
No one was allowed to wear a tie. I didn't wear a tie as the groom. No one wore a tie. I nearly threw my dad out because he turned up with a tie, despite me specifically saying no ties. But I don't know what was going on with him. But anyway, when I was in high school, there's a second one. When I was in high school, there were certain things that led to automatic detentions. Things like not doing your homework, not having your PE uniform, not wearing the appropriate uniform outside school. Like not wearing a tie because a tie was part of our school uniform. And I just refused to wear a tie. I just wasn't going to wear a tie. I hate ties. No, I will never wear a tie, I said. You might not think that's not a big deal. Just lay low.
It sounds. Anyone who knows anything about private schools know that this is a massive deal.
But you can just avoid being seen. Then you don't need to wear a tie.
No, the kids will snitch.
Well, here's the thing. It's not the kids.
Oh.
I happen to catch the same bus as one of the school's teachers.
Oh, okay.
Almost every morning.
Yeah, that's
like
bad.
every second morning or so. And I knew for a fact that if I didn't wear my tie, I would get detention.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a transaction I was happy to undertake. I was happy to trade the detention for not wearing a tie. And so every morning it would be, hey, Mr. Maddock, I assume that's another detention? He said, yes, that's another detention. Okay, then. And so I accumulated literally hundreds of detentions through high school for not wearing a tie. I basically was on detention pretty much every time it was a detention. I was there. Just my Tuesday and Thursday after school was detention, right? And so we get to year 12 and I'm elected to be a school prefect. There's a bunch of them. And the school prefect's job is to man the school gates and to perform some basic disciplinary task with the kids. Now,
and
to wear a tie.
Yeah.
A prefect's tie, special tie to signify that you're a prefect. So they know who is and who isn't, right?
I assumed that the special part of this tie was not that it was invisible.
No, sadly it wasn't. And I just refused. I said, no, I'm not going to wear that tie. Just forget it. So I understood I had to communicate that I was a prefect. So sometimes I wore it like a belt. And I'd have the tie just hanging by my side. Sometimes I wore it around my head.
Yeah,
like
cool.
around my forehead. But I just never wore it around my neck. Never. I was just never going to wear it around my neck. And some teachers had a real issue with this. And so I got sent to the principal. And I just came right out of the gate to the principal and just said, I know why I'm here. I'm not going to wear the tie. So if you want to cancel my prefectship, fine, I get it. I totally get it. I understand. Like, I'm not going to throw a tantrum. I understand.
Very reasonable.
But I'm not going to wear the tie. And the principal said, did you think I didn't know who you were when we approved of you being a prefect? You've been at this school for 6 years. Do you think we weren't aware of your picadillos? I don't think he's word picadillos, but whatever it was. And I said, well, I suppose when you put it that way, I guess he did know. And he said, just make it worth my while, please. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And so I was like, a really conscientious prefect, but I never wore that tie. I always had it around my waist. Like that's basically what became my little uniform. The tie as a belt with just hanging down past my pocket. So
they couldn't have given you a badge that's like a specialized Chaz Lucidello the prefect badge.
I'm not sure they had like merch just sitting around like that.
Another classic. We're going to bend the rules for Chaz Lucidello, the elitist story.
I wasn't asking them to do that. I was happy for them to just take the prefectship away.
No, this is going to turn up on James Morrow's next segment, no doubt.
We're getting right out of time to talk about James Morrow and Hassan Piker and all the rest of it. I'm going to do that next week.
It'll come.
I'm going to do it next week. I haven't forgotten, okay? I know there's some people who are very anxious for me to talk about the Hassan Piker interview. If you want to ask me questions about it, do it. I'm going to talk about it at some point in time, probably next week. But I want to talk about the drones before we go on, before we wrap up. This really surprised me. I was expecting you folks to chastise me about how dystopian my vision was.
You absolutely were.
Yeah.
I was too.
Yeah, you expecting that as well, yeah?
Yeah.
None of that. None of that. I was thinking when I was talking about, oh yeah, it'll be so great. Drones will drop products in my little basket outside my house at 3 a.m., 5 minutes after I requested. I thought, these guys are listening to this going, what a loser. This is just so stupid. What about the delivery workers at SAC, Chaz? What about them? I got none of that. None of that. You're on my wavelength. Island Ferry writes, drone delivery, chimneys or maybe weighted elevators with roof hatches. It's basically Christmas, but in real life. Just saying.
That's cool.
Sally writes, Canberra was living your drone delivery dream in 2022 with wing drone delivery, just food, coffee, lunch, etc., and some selected groceries, not available in all areas, particularly areas with above ground power lines. Was great entertainment for the kids though during lockdown. Can recommend. Carrot said there were other locations as well. We've had drone delivery in South Brisbane for years now. I'll say it's great when I want a boost or a halal snack pack and can't be bothered leaving the house. So there we go. People are all into it.
Yeah.
But then,
I had no idea it was available in Australia.
I had no idea as well. But then these experienced hands in Brisbane and Canberra in particular, they came with a warning.
Oh.
It might be a little bit of a letdown for me.
Oh.
Not because my vision is dystopian, but just because it's not reflecting reality. Thomas wrote, we've had drone delivery for a decade in ACT. It hasn't taken off. There are many issues to resolve, such as the danger of falling out of or inadvertently dropping objects out of the sky, either onto public areas such as roads or parks, or indeed over people's houses, which is also a privacy concern. Hazza had worse news. I was so keen for drone delivery until I visited a friend's workshop in the industrial zone of Brisbane, where a drone delivery trial has been approved for the last 5 or so years. Even in the heart of industry, you could hear the drone outside fly past with someone's Red Bull and pie. They are obnoxiously loud. During the day with heavy industry and traffic all around, it's surprisingly how loud those things are. The last thing you want is that flying over your house all day, or to the teenagers down the road who want their Doritos and Slurpee delivered at 3 a.m. I believe RMIT was doing studies into blade design to mitigate this issue. I haven't followed it close enough to know how far away realising any outcomes of those programs are from production and uptake in the market. So there's cause for hope from RMIT, but not yet. So how noisy, Lockie, is it?
Well, given all of the footage, the clips of Trump that we see, I'm assuming it's got to be quieter than the helicopters he stands next to whenever we need a grab.
You can judge for yourself. Jonathan emailed us a video at producer at podcast, what was it? peppodcast.com. That's it. There you go. I should know these addresses. I don't email myself. This is serious correspondence. Thank you so much for this, Jonathan. In 2020, 2021, I lived in the northern suburbs of Canberra. There we go, Canberra again. Had a drone delivery service as a proof of concept. They had a limited number of items that could be delivered. Basically staple groceries and machine-made coffee. They had a promo at one stage for a free packet of Tim Tams. Delivery time was sometimes 5 minutes. That's why I wanted.
That's what you want.
I've attached a video I took back in May 2021. I think the video was a cappuccino, which didn't spill. That's good. You'll see the only drawback, the whirring noise, which will probably cause various complaints if this goes national in Australia. However, that will need to be compared to removing cars off the road. Good point. Let's watch the video.
Oh,
that's loud, Lockie.
Yeah, that is loud.
Oh, he thinks it's loud too. That is almost helicopter loud.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
It's pretty awesome, though.
That's pretty cool. Winding the food down on a winch.
That's loud.
Yeah, that's going to cause some complaints.
That would be a problem at 3 a.m. That would definitely be a problem at 3 a.m. Hopefully the good folk over at RMIT are going to sort this out soon. Fingers crossed. I'm still excited, but maybe my vision's going to be a little like that hoverboard, always a little off.
It sounds, Chaz, that when you need something delivered at 3 a.m., you're still going to have to get me to do it.
Don't say that thing. I think you do.
No, I've never bought you food before.
Thank you so much, Locke. Do you have anything to add?
Absolutely nothing.
No. Okay, I'll go get my knee seen to. I'll see you guys next Friday. Not this Friday, next Friday. So a little over a week. Till then, stay peppy.